allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Ms. Brewer, can we have a roll call, please?
Present.
Commissioner Israelit?
Here.
Vice Chair Couch?
Here.
Chair Martos?
Here. All right, we'll move on to item 4, approval of minutes. We have 2 minutes to approve, and item 4C, we'll get to that. That's was a redaction of a person's name on those minutes. That'll be a quick, easy thing to approve. So I hope you all have read the minutes from January 9th and February 13th. Were there any corrections requested for those 2 sets of minutes? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve both sets?
I move to approve both sets of minutes.
I second.
All right, all right. Motion to approve minutes from January 9th and February 13th. Is there any dissension? Let's see, I approve. Vice Chair Couchy, do you approve?
Yes.
Okay, then by unanimous consent, we'll make this quick. The minutes are approved. All right, item 4C is the approval of the minutes from October 13th of 2022. And there are only 2 people on this commission right now that were here that night. And so what I asked, how do we approve that if there's only 2 of us? So the response from the city clerk is that a person who gave information that night requested that they have their name redacted from the minutes, which if you've looked, that name is blanked out. And that's the only change. And so does that mean that we as a group can approve if we view that?
Yes, we're just approving the redaction in the minutes.
Yep.
And it's actually just the address that he asked to have removed from the minutes.
Got it.
Redacting
Got it.
the address.
Okay. Okay, so hopefully in your package, you saw that there was that line that was blacked out. Okay, so does anybody not approve of that set of minutes and the redaction that was done?
I approve.
I approve.
Approve, okay. Unanimous consent will approve those minutes. All right, we'll move on. We have a lot to talk about tonight, so wanted to make that quick. So we'll move on to public comments, and public comments are for items that are not on our agenda. Tonight's agenda has North Rollins Road Bicycle and Pedestrian Improvement Project and Murchison Truesdale Drive and Davis Drive Bicycle Improvement Project. So public comment is for items that are not on the agenda. So during this section, item 5, public comments, members of the public may speak on any item that we do not have on our agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for future commission agenda may do so during this public comment period. The Ralph M. Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits this commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are requested to fill out a request to speak card located at the back table by the door and hand it to staff. Ms. Brewer, the provision of a name, address, or other identifying information is optional, and speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. So I have 2 requests to speak. I'm assuming that these are not, the request is for items that are not on our agenda. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
And we'll start with the first one that I was handed. Mr. Park? Actually, my request was for an agendized item. Okay. We'll set both of those aside. Is there any other public comment of non-agendized items? If not, then I will close public comment. And I want to ask the public, how many people are here for item 6B, Murchison, Truesdale, Davis? 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. Okay. How many people are here for North Rollins Road bicycle? 2, 3, 3. Okay. Okay. Welcome. Are you here for a particular agenda item? Yes. North Rollins or the Murchison Drive, Truesdale Drive? Truesdale, okay, okay. Okay, I saw hands go up for both from particular people. I was wondering, and forgive me for posing this to our commission, because a number of the people in the audience here do want to hear about Murchison Drive. If maybe we could switch the agenda items and do Murchison Drive first, Murchison, Truesdale, Davis Drive first, have that discussion, and then move on to North Rollins. Commissioner, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Majority? Okay, okay. So that's what we'll do then. We'll go to item 6B. Mr. Wong, if you can bring that up first, that way we can have the public hear about that project and give us their feedback.
All right. Thank you, Chair Martos. Commissioners, tonight we're giving you the update of the Murchison Drive, Truesdale Drive, Davis Drive Bicycle Improvement Project. Let's get right into it. So for tonight, we'll give you, and I think we've previously presented this to the commission just to give you a preview. We're going to present the staff recommended concepts for the 3 roadways. And based on our feedback from our June 2024 meeting, as well as online survey and other outreach efforts. For this, we're going to go ahead and we took in the comments, reviewed them, and then we're doing the revised design that we'll present to you tonight. And then we will hopefully, if we get a motion of support, switch into the design phase and get this project moving so we can get into construction. So again, for folks here, this is usually our CIP project where we go through a process where we do a lot of outreach. There's community meetings. We go back. We are here. We are heading towards the final design phase, which are these purple, and then the red is when we start getting into construction.
I can't read that.
Right there. Sure. Are there any?
Oh, you're welcome to move up closer to the front.
All right. Sorry about that.
Sit right up here.
Sorry.
We usually provide copies, but I'll wait for folks to move around.
Plus, it's more
So this is,
you all.
yeah, this is more about our process. Yeah.
Sure. So as you can see, for those of you now move closer, in blue is kind of the conception projects where we start working with getting a designer. We've gotten a grant. We move into the green where we start formulating some concepts. And then the orange is where we start sharing those concepts after some revisions. Now we're towards the end of the revisions where we'd like to start trying to get some determine community support and then get a motion so we can move forward with the final design. So this project is, we're just approaching putting pen to paper. And then in red here, the rest of it is our construction bid process where we've got to select a contractor and then start construction. The streets here are again, Murchison, Truesdale, Davis. We have Murchison between Sequoia and California. Truesdale initially was between California and Castaneda, and then Davis between Casada and Albemarle. So first off, let's start with Murchison. Currently, it's a roadway with 2 lanes. It's an arterial roadway which connects El Camino to many of the streets on both sides for us and Millbrae. It's got on-street parking, but as you can see from this, it's a fairly wide 2 travel lanes. So when we first talked about it, the first alternative we gave was parking protected buffered bicycle lanes. And those give ultimately a lot of protection to the cyclist because the parked vehicles act as a buffer, a little protection. The key benefits are we're not dropping or changing any lanes, so that stays the same. And again, the parked vehicles provide a little shelter for the bicyclists when they're there. One of the things to consider with this option was that there'd be a loss of parking near the driveways. As you can imagine, if cars are this far out trying to turn in, you're going to have to go pretty square. You won't be able to cut it a little bit. So we'd have to pull back some parking there to make it so turns into driveways are a little easier. Parked vehicles may encroach upon the buffer. As you can see in this photo here, the hatched area is a buffer. Vehicles might go over. There's no physical, like, for instance, most of you have curbs that prevent you from entering the sidewalk. This is just striping. Again, the other ones, emergency vehicle turning impacts at intersections. A little tough to see here, but as you're making the turn, again, emergency vehicles would have to square up. For them, it's a little tougher because, as you can imagine, the vehicles are much longer. So when they do that, they have even a right turn, they have to swing into the opposing lane, especially on these streets because they're narrower. Coming off of El Camino and swinging onto it's not big because you're going from a wide street to a wide street. Here, you're going from a wide street to a narrow street. So they would have to swing into opposing traffic. And then as you see this one, if an emergency vehicle comes by, normally everyone should be shifting to the right to try to pull over to allow the emergency vehicle to go by. Here, if there's parked vehicles, the vehicles that are trying to pull over, there is no space. So that was alternative one that we had showed. And again, those were some of the key things we got for feedback. So alternative two, this is where we've left it something a little bit more traditional. The parking is up against the curb. The bicycle lane is similar to what you might see as a class 2 bicycle lane. However, there's buffers between the parked vehicle and the travel vehicle. So it's a much wider bicycle lane. So we don't, we wouldn't have to necessarily lose parking spaces for driveways. For this one is the staff recommend concept because it also doesn't impact emergency vehicles. They're able to turn as they would, and people pulling over for emergency vehicles, while not ideal, but under an emergency situation, they could pull into the bicycle lane and allow the emergency vehicle to go past. So that's for Murchison. For Truesdale, different facility. We have on-street parking on both sides, 2 travel lanes in each direction. The first alternative that we looked at was, again, the parking buffered bicycle lane. I'm sorry, this is the other one. This is where we put parking on the side and had a buffer between the travel vehicles and the bicycle lane and a 2-way left turn lane. So as you can see here, we dropped a lane in each direction. So there's 1 lane in each direction as opposed to 2, but we still have parking and a bicycle facility and a 2-way left turn lane to allow folks not to block vehicles behind them as they're trying to make a turn into a driveway or into a street. So this offers some protection for bicyclists with the buffer, more than what's out there now being a class 3 facility. However, as you can imagine, going from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, it reduces overall roadway capacity. And we also found that during the peak hour in the morning, specifically drop-off school and commute hours, it dropped from a level service C at Casada Truesdale to a level service F. And again, something I point out, and for all these alternatives that we show for Truesdale, because of emergency services and the need, I know some of you lived at Mills, but at Mills Peninsula, heading into the hospital, going westbound, there are 2 left turn lanes going into it. Emergency vehicles, CCFD, Central County Fires, let us know. They would like to continue having those 2 left turn lanes because if 1 left turn lane is filled up and they're going through on an emergency or they're trying to drop off, that other lane allows a little bypass that people at least maybe somewhere to pull into. So they would like to continue that. So again, with this alternative at that section, we wouldn't be able to do any sort of lane drop there because there's simply not enough room at that additional lane. The other alternative, second alternative, to try to accommodate the keep the capacity up and to continue to have a bicycle facility, we have what we call, we kept all 4 lanes of traffic, did a buffered bike lane. However, this one showed no on-street parking. The bicycle lane is put up against the sidewalk with a buffer. Again, the operations of this would be similar to what's out there now. However, the big one here, especially in an area it's mostly residential with the exception of the hospital and senior facilities and some of the retail closer to El Camino, no on-street parking, which is, we heard back was significant. So with that, we also looked at an option that we can combine everything, leave it as is, and incorporate a bicycle lane, which is possible. However, in order to do that, so this, we have the 4 lanes of traffic, we have on-street parking, we have a bicycle lane. So there's no change to what's out there. However, we can only do this by narrowing the parking lane, the bicycle lane, and the travel lanes to their minimums to fit everything in. And we heard back from the feedback we got from the cycling community. Again, creates a higher level of stress because everything is just sandwiched in there. I mean, a door opens, there's potential for dooring, and the vehicles will be traveling very close on the travel way next to them. So with those in consideration, our recommendation is to remove the section of Truesdale from El Camino to Castaneda out from the project. So that's from, remember, El Camino west of the project, that would be dropped for this. Our recommendation is to, between El Camino and California, so this is by the police station, is to continue what's, have 2 travel lanes, or sorry, 3 travel lanes, a 2-way left turn lane, but that's not correct. And then have the bicycle lanes and still have on-street parking. We can fit that in. This, sorry about that. This is not dictated on this slide, but it's not going to change what's out there. We're able to incorporate the bicycle lanes because on one side, on the south side by the police station, there's only a single parking space, or I believe 2 parking spaces in front of the police station. And those are 20-minute short-term ones that we would move and slide things over. So with that, the last one we have is Davis Drive. And Davis Drive, the intent in the bicycle pedestrian master plan, it called for a class 3 or bicycle boulevard. There was never an intent to put, there's just simply not enough room there. So with that, again, we'll go with our greenback sharrows to kind of indicate it's class 3 and to heighten that, as well as stripe in some edge lines to kind of narrow up the roadway and show more parking in it. And specifically at Marco Polo and Davis, we would go ahead and do, not everyone's favorite, but the quick build bulb outs at the corners, as well as put a high visibility crosswalk for students, parents, folks to cross there. And then actually put what you've seen all over town, the vertical pedestrian paddle, which will, between the necked roads, should slow folks going through there. So with that, then that's our recommended concept for that. And again, this one, it's being phased. We can do these improvements. I think we talked to the community, and at the time, we will hold off on other traffic calming measures for this by not putting in speed cushions at this time. But that's still a possibility. But we heard from the community, they're not strong for it right now. So we'll give this a try, but we can always come back and add that to make this a bicycle facility. Last, we emailed notices for tonight's meeting, interested parties. We've been in communication with the city of Millbrae, as well as our county fire. Send out notice or emails to BIS and Franklin, let them know about this and their student bodies. And we also went our next door and our other social media outlets. So with that, again, our goal is to present this to you tonight, and hoping for a motion of support for Murchison, the alternative 2, which is the buffered bicycle lanes, with them between the travel vehicles and the parked vehicles. In addition, I'm sorry, I forgot. And something that came feedback from this meeting the last time, to get folks to stay on Murchison longer, which has the class 2 facility. There was some discussion in order to get folks that are using that stay on the class 2 and then be able to bring them to Truesdale if they're going to BIS coming from the north, that we would use one of the streets and highlight it. And we, Ogden was selected between Murchison and Truesdale. So there we would put some greenback churros and make that connection a little more solid. For Truesdale is to remove the portion between Castaneda and El Camino from the project, but do a class 2 facility between El Camino and California. And lastly, Davis Drive, a phased approach where we would install greenback churros, the edge lines, create a quick build bulb out, and enhance that crosswalk there at Marco Polo and Davis. And with that, if we get support from the community and from the commission on this, we'll take it to council, and then hopefully then we'll shift into design and get this done hopefully during the summer. But with that, ends the presentation, and be glad to take any question.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wong. So for the public in attendance, the way we're going to proceed here is the commissioners will ask clarifying questions of Mr. Wong on the project. And then I will open it up to public comment. You're welcome to speak. You'll each have 3 minutes to speak on this project. You can ask questions or just provide feedback. And once public comment, everyone's had a chance to speak on this, then I'll close public comment and the commissioners will add their comments. So we'll start with questions from the commissioners. Who would like to start? Commissioner Israelit, you had your hand, both hands up. Why don't you start?
Since I'm on the far end here, thank you very much. The presentation was super clear. And I think it sounds like staff's really put a lot of thought into all the details. So makes it much easier for us. I only have questions about the Davis because I was on the BIS subcommittee that worked on the rerouting everything for the safest school safety. So my question is 2 questions. One is, will this striping on the road to visually narrow the road, which is we know is effective in slowing speeds from our experience with the Lion-Hogue traffic calming experience, will that continue all the way down to Albemarle? Like this is only shown just past Lassen, and I didn't know if that's because, why show a white line going down the rest of the road? But I just want to confirm that this goes all the way down to Albemarle.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely look at it. And yes, part of it is because the engineer's limited drawing capabilities didn't want to extend it all the way there. But yes, we will consider extending all the way to Albemarle, the edge line.
Okay, yeah, because I think that was recommended by the consultants that were hired when we first started doing the BIS school safety plan. So that is one question. And my second question is also on the same project. I know we batted around solutions for coming up with crosswalks at that funky intersection where
The offset intersection? Yes.
And so I'm happy to see that you have this bulb out and school safety crosswalk there. But so my concern is, for some reason, there's no sidewalk. If the kids cross from the south across this new crosswalk to where they're dropped on that other side of the street, there's no sidewalk there. In fact, there are trees planted there. And I'm not sure if that is an easement or why that's one of the few spots in the city where there is no pedestrian walkway. And we have a middle school right up the hill. So I was wondering, could a sidewalk be put there, which would mean that we would have to cut down trees? Otherwise, if that cannot be done, because if there is a sidewalk there, then we can get the kids to that crosswalk, the new crosswalk at Clarice. If we can't put a sidewalk there, then can we put another crosswalk across Marco Polo at that intersection where there's a stop sign to get kids safely across to where there is sidewalks? So that would be just something that struck me.
Through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I'll check on the sidewalk again. There may be some easement. There might be some reason that that's never been a sidewalk. It might not even be I'll find out more about that. And so if it's possible, maybe we can do it as part of this project. If not, we'll work with our CIP group to eventually get a sidewalk there. But definitely in the meantime, we can put the crosswalk also across, it's stop controlled, so that's fine, across Marco Polo. And again, they can walk up and go up Clarice, just so we worked on that plan.
Yeah, I definitely would feel better if there was a safe way for them. Thank you. Those are my only questions.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Others, questions?
I just
Commissioner
have
Brown?
A real quick question about Murchison Alternative One, if we can pull that up. Is that, this looks like what is actually there currently on California, if I'm mistaken. We have the parking next to the traffic and the bikes away from the traffic. And I guess my question is, and we may not know the answer, is has that increased cycling? I guess there's more, or have there been more cyclists riding in that lane before we did California? I don't know if you have the answer to that or not, but because if that's the case and this has worked, would we not consider this as an alternative? And I understand the having to make the right turns and having to square off and things like that. But and I guess the other question part of that is, with that buffer in the middle between the opposing lanes, the yellow buffer in the middle, does that, I think you said the traffic would have to go into the opposing lane to make that turn. Does that not give you enough room to make that turn in that buffer if you're turning right?
Through the chair?
Yep.
I think with this, the right turns, I was more concerned was like coming from here, if you can see the cursor, and then turning into a driveway.
Yes. Yeah.
Just think of it as what we've done on California and Truesdale by the police department, where we put delineators up to make it so folks couldn't cut the corner. And so if you're trying to access your driveway here, you couldn't cheat a little bit here. You'd have to somehow come here and go square in, and you're losing the width. That's when California is a little different because, well, it's similar to this photo because we don't have any driveways on that east side of California. And so we're able to fit that in, and it's a little different there. Let's see, and that's a class 4 facility. This is a class 2, buffered class 2. But I mean, we are obtaining counts. We're monitoring that. I don't have that information now, but I've ridden it myself. I've seen folks. I would say there are people riding it, but I'm not seeing packs of school kids riding it. If that gives you kind of a comparison.
Okay, thank you. And this is great, by the way. It's a lot of really good information. So I wasn't here in the beginning of this project, but it's really good information. So thank you.
Don't worry, there are more coming.
Yeah, I gather.
All right, Vice Chair Couchy, questions?
Yeah, so I have just a couple of questions. So if we start with Murchison Drive, maybe go to this one, maybe go to this.
Okay.
So first, I will also say, Andy, this was very well thought out presentation, so thank you. Appreciate that. So if we look at Murchison, and I'm going to have the same comment on Truesdale as well, we're connecting them to California where we have a bike lane, but it looks like it stops right at California. Can we look at making sure we put in the green stripes through the intersection there at Street of California, especially there at Murchison and Truesdale, is, I would say, somewhat high traffic. The cars go fast. Let's just put it that way. The cars go fast there. So I think if we could put more visibility, because that is when bicyclists are at their most vulnerable, when they have to cross through an intersection. So if we could add the green striping there on both of those, I think that would be good.
Through the chair, just a quick.
Yep, go ahead.
That one. As part of this project, we can explore it. However, as you know, many on the commission find out, or folks find out, El Camino is not City of Burlingame's, it's Caltrans. Although we are working on the El Camino Rail Renewal Project, and we can It hasn't been added as a comment, but we can approach them and see if that's a possibility, because right now we don't have the facility, but we can definitely ask that one, but there's again, some.
So just for clarity, I was talking about California. I do think you're spot on, though. We should look into El Camino as well because of the high speed of the cars on El Camino. But on California, we have, when someone is going north, the bicyclist is going north, and then they turn onto Murchison or they turn onto Truesdale, they're going to have to cross over California where the cars are going at a higher speed. So that's where I was hoping we can put the green striping.
And we'll take a look. That's something we can try to look at to see if we can transition folks from California on to Truesdale and Murchison. We can look at that. That's something that I believe going from Truesdale and Murchison is on there, but maybe coming the other way.
Okay. And then on Merchants as well, we're ending it there at the school. Can we actually have the bike lane go into the school and go into where we have the bike route, their bike racks?
And you're talking about Mills High School?
Correct.
The roadway narrows up, and we looked at some of that of options. I think once they get there, there's a horseshoe at Mills, and this takes you up to the intersection, but the horseshoe actually begins, back here. So they could actually get off and get into campus this way without having to get to this intersection. Because I believe their bike cage is back here.
So if they turn on that horseshoe, can they get to their bike cage?
They would go through campus, go up around and be able to enter. It narrows up over here. And again, this is City of Millbrae.
Okay.
We can try to coordinate with them. There's a better way, but they have the jurisdiction on that.
Maybe we can talk to the school too, of making sure they get the clarity of how we want the students to take their bikes into the route we want them to take to the bike rack. And then I have a few questions on Truesdale. So since the recommendation was to not do the work from north or west of El Camino, I know that we have received a grant from that. So do we have plans on what we will do with those dollars?
Well, we've contacted our funding partner on that one, and so we'll be presenting this to them as well. But then there's costs, the additional costs. We'll see where it all ends up falling. We may lose some of it, but we may apply some of it to do a little bit better or more on Murchison and Davis than we had originally planned.
Do they have to approve that?
They do not.
Okay. So I know that this is a critical part of the bike ped plan. So will we be able to come back to this later to figure out if we can figure out a solution here?
Through Chair, absolutely. I mean, this isn't the bike ped master plan. If this doesn't go through this time, at some point we will redo the bike ped master plan and see where the community lies, right? I mean, when we did the bike ped master plan previously, there was interest of connecting this route, but we never did the deep dive. That was the point of this project or any project subsequent to the bike master plan that we're going. So we will do a deeper dive, but we anticipate it will still be something we will look at. But again, we'll go through the same process and maybe get a little bit more in the beginning since for the bike ped master plan, reach out to the folks in Truesdale a little bit more.
Okay.
All right.
And then a few questions on Davis. So I do like the alternative of kids being able to get to the school by going up Davis, since it is a little more of a calmer street. However, it is an uphill street. Well, I guess it depends on which direction you're coming from. I did watch a YouTube video that a student took of him biking to school, and it was very enlightening to see, how he's huffing and puffing and giving it all got to go up the hill, and the bikes or the cars are, really coming close to him and going around him. And I know that sensation, and it's not a pleasant one. So I did bring this up once before. Is there any way that we can do, that bikes have priority during school, school drop-off and school pickup? So that these kids don't have to have these cars giving them that unsafe feeling. They're trying to huff and puff up that hill.
Through your chair. And I believe Davis is probably selected because I forget, is it Balboa, the next adjacent street, is actually even steeper, right, going up here. So the idea is here, the greenback sharrows and some of the pedestrian improvements just heighten that this is a pedestrian bicycle area. And then maybe there's some signage we can include, bicycle boulevards, but the greenback sharrows, that's why they pop, right? You see that and you know to expect bicycles on here. So that is the thought behind this, that we'll enhance it first and see how it is. I mean, again, the hill, there's really nothing we're going to be able to do about, but
That's fine. I just think that we need to consider making it a bike priority. The bike sharrows really don't provide the protection that a bicyclist needs, especially a child. So the cars, unfortunately, still feel the road is theirs, and they're trying to hustle around the child that's going slower. So if we can consider making the bicycles a priority at school drop-off and pickup, I think it would, especially if we're not giving them a bike lane on Truesdale. And then the only other thing I would say is, did we look at taking that bike lane and Marco Polo into the hospital? I know that I experienced 3 times in the last month that there's no parking available at that hospital. So creating some alternative ways to get to that hospital would be, I think, something to think about, since we're right there. That Marco Polo, we could provide access into the hospital there.
through your chair, that's not something we looked at, but again, I think once you go down Marco Polo, yeah, I mean, it's hospital property. I mean, if someone could continue on Marco Polo, and I know that's at times is talking about being developed, I think that's now off the table of how they want to get folks in. That may be an alternative, but yeah, I don't think we will provide another access back there.
Through the chair?
When she's done,
Oh, I was just.
when she's done, you can
Oh, it was just
add. Are you done,
I am.
Vice Chair? Okay, go ahead.
There is-
Where's Rillet?
off of Marco Polo into the hospital.
There is, but there's no bike lane, there's no bike. So I was just saying to create more of a bike in that.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Rillet, did you have something else? I saw you raise your hand earlier.
Oh, and it was also regarding one of her questions, just if we do have funds available because we aren't doing the Truesdale, then would it be possible, Mr. Wong, to have like those bump outs on Davis that everyone hates be permanent bump outs that are, more attractive? Like, are those the kinds of things you could do with funds?
Through chair, I know we talked about, so you're talking about like a permanent bulb out, like Burlingame Avenue?
Mhm.
We can look into that. That may be a possibility, but again, as that requires additional work, because these bulb outs, you literally, I mean, well, they're not as attractive. They don't have the civil improvements that you need for grading and drainage and making sure it's, that bulb out is now ADA compliant. I will follow up and see if that's a possibility, but yeah, it may be, we can look at that.
Okay. I have some questions, Mr. Wong.
Sure.
So I did site survey on all 3 roads the other night, and I have some concerns, well, on all of them, but Murchison. So as I drove, Murchison was very wide when I turned left from El Camino onto Murchison, or California onto Murchison. It's very wide. There's no housing in that area. I think it's all commercial, or yeah, it's commercial property. The Burlingame Plaza, I think maybe is there, right? And then some things on the right where Lucky's used to be. And then as you cross over Magnolia, I guess, You start getting into the residential area, and there's cars parked on both sides. And then as you get up closer to the school, it really narrows.
It does.
So my question is, this Murchison, any of these alternatives, I don't see how like alternative one and alternative two could work in that upper area of Murchison where the road is already really narrow. So is there some sort of hybrid plan to go up there? And in addition to that, I don't think that parking is really necessary in that east section on the street, in that east section where it's all commercial property. You know, there's the shopping centers on the left and the right. So I guess the question is, these plans, are they going to start from California, same plan all the way up till it gets to Sequoia? Or will there be some tailoring as the streets change? Because the streets really change all the way up.
Sure. Through the chair.
Yep.
As it gets, and you're correct, going from El Camino West, it narrows up close by the school. And as you'll see later tonight, similar to some proposals on Rollins Road where it changes, the section changes, we will look at some of that, and everything should remain the same, and potentially it becomes just for that block a class 3 because there's no space to put in something else because it gets narrow, and we maintain parking. We do the narrowing of the road, but there may not be a class 2 facility marked through there because there's just not space. And again, it's this, and then when you get further west, it is residential. So we'll look at, it won't be a cookie cutter, this section the whole way through. We'll look at the transitions. It's just at the ends where it's a little different. You've seen, this is the bulk of it. On the other end, again, there's space between California and El Camino. It's a different section there as well. So we will get in the class 2 facility and then transition to make it meet the remainder, whether it be a class 3, because I imagine Murchison west of Sequoia is, there are no markings. If there are, there are Sharrow markings at that end.
So help me understand what I'm looking at here. Alternative one, alternative two is going to be for what section of Murchison? And let's take it in 3 segments, right? There's California up to about Magnolia, I guess. And then Magnolia up to, I guess, maybe Ogden. Here, actually, I wrote it down. So road narrows from Ogden to Sequoia. Ogden, Sequoia, right? That's the narrowest part. And then I wrote down street parking. Didn't really see that was necessary from California to Magnolia because that's all commercial property and they have parking lots. So help me understand where alternative one and alternative two would go on Murchison. The whole length or 2/3 of the length, 1/3 of the length?
Won't be able to give you the percentage, but so between Sequoia and Ogden.
Yep.
Where it gets narrow, that would be
Pretty narrow.
probably class, which Greenback Sharrows, that would be a class 3 because we won't be able to fit the facility in without parking removal and the other things we've talked about there. So Ogden all the way to El Camino, actually just shy of El Camino because it widens up at the intersection, but we will have a class 2 facility through that. So for the most part, Ogden to El Camino, actually Ogden all the way to California, but at California and El Camino, because they're different lanes, it doesn't look exactly like that, but there will be a class 2 facility on there. So you will have that cross section of a lane in each direction, the buffered bicycle facility, and parking, on-street parking.
Okay. Okay. All right. And then can you also explain if it's possible to put a 2-way turn lane on Murchison instead of that delimited area in the middle?
we can look into,
calculations and it looks like it could fit, but I'm only looking like inches remaining.
so if we go with this, again, the preferred alternative, we might be able to widen this section out to be a two-way left turn lane. It'll come at the expense of either the lane widths or the buffer.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we have this similar on Carolyn where we have a wide buffer on both sides. So if someone opens the door, there's a buffer. And again, if someone comes right too close, you have the buffer. So we can look at that, but we'd also want this to be wide enough that someone pulls in and they're not pitched a little bit and then blocking the travel lane. So we can look at that, but I believe we were trying to give some priority to the bicycles here and give them a buffer.
Okay. Okay, and then last question on Davis. So Davis, in the diagram, it says alternative 1 staff recommendation, right? Right, so the edge lines and the greenback sharrows end at Marco Polo, but the map shows it goes all the way up to Castaneda. So will they continue the greenbacks and the edge? Well, I'm looking at this map right here. Shows the project area goes all the way up to Castaneda, or Casada, excuse me, Casada. But your diagram shows it ending at Marco Polo. So what's correct? Will they continue all the way up to Casada or end at Marco Polo?
I will double check on that one. You're correct on that. I know we were trying to do the pet improvements at Marco Polo, so that's what the focus was. And and the bicycles do go all the way up Casada, so potentially this extends all the way there. I will confirm that.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
And I have confirmed it. I'm sorry, the drawing is in error.
Which one?
This drawing, this Sharrows will continue all the way to Casada. This will be matched between Marco Polo and Casada as well.
Okay, okay, very good. All right, those are all my questions. So I think we can open it up to public comment. Thanks for being patient with us. So let me start with the people that filled out a request to speak. And Mr. Park, you were the first one that handed out.
May I comment on the map view?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
You want which map?
And-
One?
The one that showed the 3 red lines.
So Ms. Brewer. Ms.
Thank
Brewer.
you.
So we have a lot of people. Can you set the timer? 3 minutes? All right, you're on top of it. I can't see it. Thank you.
Great. So I'm a resident of the neighborhood. I'm a bike commuter to the Barton Caltrains. Really appreciate all the work that has gone into this, so thank you so much. Just sort of taking it piece by piece. Very excited about the improvements to Murchison, although I'd plus one the commissioner's question about left turn lanes or left turns from Murchison to California and vice versa. Likewise, very excited about the improvements to Davis, especially the bulb outs. I talk regularly with the crossing guards at the school, and they are very happy with the bulb outs. I'm very happy with the bulb outs. I have kids who walk there every day, so thank you for those. On Truesdale, as a commuter, and as we know, like Quixada is a class 3 bike lane. You're building a great new bike facility on Murchison. Sounds like you're also adding one potentially to Ogden, which would be great, but there's no connectivity between those. I understand why we can't do anything on Truesdale between El Camino and Ogden. But the 1 or 2 blocks between Quixada and Sequoia or Ogden are the critical piece of connection from Quixada's class 3 bike lane to all of the things that you're building on Murchison. Is there nothing we can do for those 2 blocks, just those 2 blocks, or even just the 1 block between Quixada and Sequoia, to improve the safety of connecting for those 2 routes? There are kids who go there. I bike there on a daily basis. We all know that that intersection is notorious for cars running the stop signs and so on and so forth. Anything that we could do to improve that would be greatly appreciated. Even if we can't do full bike lane treatment, is there something that we can do with Sharrows? Something that we can do with a left turn lane, since everybody's going to have to turn left to connect those 2 routes? Like just a plea to you and the commission to add that to this plan. I think you responded to the vice chair's question about could we look at this later? I don't see anything that could possibly be more favorable in the future about this. It sounds like you have funding for this now. We all know construction costs are going up. Nothing is changing about the road dimensions there or the house. Now is the time. If we can't do this now, I don't see how we would ever be able to do this. And without that, that's going to be a critical hole in the whole bike map for this city. So I just really request that you reconsider just those 2 blocks. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Park. All right, Ms. Samuelson. Thank you.
Hi. I don't know if she's got to get the timer going. It's okay. I'm Jennifer Samuelson. I live on Clarice, directly in between Marco Polo and Quesada. I have 4 children. I have been a Franklin parent for 12 years now. My youngest is a first grader, so I have a long way to go still. I walk and drive this all day, every day. My first thought about Davis and the connection to Marco Polo, the crosswalk thing, is huge because there is no sidewalk, as you mentioned there. And Clarice is now a one-way street during morning drop-off, so I don't think you want kids biking up a street that all of the traffic is funneling down. They probably need to continue biking up Davis all the way to Quesada. It's really crowded in the mornings. There's practically 3 cars across on Clarice coming down the hill from Quesada towards Marco Polo. Next is on Truesdale. I am in agreement with the recommendation that it doesn't fit to put in bike lanes. There are a lot of apartment buildings. There are a lot of cars. On pickup today, I sat in traffic all the way from Magnolia to Quesada. Then I had to turn left into Franklin, come back around, and the traffic was backed up from Quesada all the way past Castaneda because of the staggered pickup times at 3 and 3:10 at the 2 schools. If you eliminate a lane in either direction to add the bike lanes, it'll go even further in both directions. I would love to bike a lot of the time, but I have activities that we have to drive to. We are a family of 6. I cannot get everybody on a bike safely. It's not physically feasible to keep all of our gear for the sports that we're going to. Besides all of our pickup and drop-off times, Franklin Field, Osberg Field, and BIS Auditorium host numerous sports leagues for youth. Cars are coming in from all cities. All of the parking is used. I frequently can't access my driveway because it is so used. I don't think that there is necessarily a way to put dedicated bike lanes, especially from El Camino to Quesada. It is a cluster so many different times of the days, even outside of Monday through Friday, 8 to 8:30, and then 3 to 3:30. Second, I noticed that you mentioned that the ambulances come in the first driveway entrance to the hospital. They also use the second driveway entrance to the hospital a lot, right past the acute care center. Lastly, I know from hearing sirens all day, all night, that between all of the medical facilities on Truesdale, there are a lot of emergency vehicles. I was a nurse before I was a mother, and we have to call 911 for every incident that takes place in a long-term care facility. So there are minimum 2 fire trucks and an ambulance at every single one of those calls.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ms. Samuelson. Oh, a big stack. Nice. Mr. Squire? Yep.
Hey, thank you to the members of the committee. My name is Mike Swire. I am the chair of the CCAG Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which helps fund projects throughout the county. I'm not sure if this is one of them. I've spent a lot of time driving in the area, dropping my kids off at school there and for activities and such and camps. I unfortunately don't think that this project is nearly aggressive enough if you really are serious about getting kids to walk and bike to school. I know we've built out for the last 100 years a system that makes it super convenient to park right in front of your house, where everybody expects the government to pay for free parking in front of your house. I pay for parking at my apartment. The government doesn't pay for it. If you really want to end this congestion, why do we have congestion? because people don't feel safe letting their kids walk or bike a half mile, a mile to schools. And I know people say nobody uses California. One, that's not true. Two, as somebody alluded to, it's only as good as the network. So if you can't get across El Camino, where, by the way, somebody died 2 days ago. I came to the meeting late. I don't know if you guys have addressed that, but all the talk about ambulances and the concern over getting ambulances as quickly as possible to the hospital, somebody died in this exact spot 2 days ago. 10% of EMS calls are people getting hit in cars. And here we finally have an opportunity to do something and change our reliance and change this structure that we've built up over 100 years. And what I'm hearing is, well, we could do this later. Let's kick the can down the road. Honestly, if you guys don't make a decision on this or kick it down to the future, what are you doing? I mean, this is why you guys not ran for office, you ran for the commission and stuff, is to make change happen, to try things, to see if the world can be a better place. I know we've built things up. I know it's very convenient for people, but the fact that we have so many people driving here is a function of it's not safe. And how do you get reduced congestion? There's always going to be congestion. I'm not sure if you're familiar with induced demand. It's basically economics. Suggests the easier you make it to do something, to park, to drive, etc., the more people will do it. Same thing with biking and walking. If you make it easier and safer, more people will do it. So you have a choice tonight. Do you want to be aggressive and really change Burlingame and stop everybody from driving their kids half mile, a mile to school, or do you want to make it safe? I really urge you on Murchison to do the protected system as opposed to the forcing the cyclists to ride next to people in cars. On Truesdale, I see no reason why you can't fit El Camino, fit bike lanes there. It's super wide. And on Davis, I know it's narrow, but the sharrows don't do anything. They are symbolic, and if anything, they're misleading. And CCAG's actually considering, the state is actually considering not funding them going forward because they're a false promise to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swire. Appreciate it. All right. So somebody without a name. Build this out. It does. Burlingame Estate and Hills. Yep. All right. That's okay. No, Richard. Public forum. We're good.
I am a resident of Burlingame Hills, and there's the Truesdale supports the Sutter Medical Center and the Peninsula Hospital, which after the rebuild and expansion supports a large area between Daly City and San Mateo. I have spent a lot of time down at Truesdale, at rehab facility for my mother, the hospital, the medical facility. No offense, but to think that people are going to ride their bike to the hospital or the medical facility when most of them are seniors and people are visiting patients in the hospital does not make any sense to me unless you work there. And a lot of people that work in the area, they're commuting from outside the area. They take Truesdale down to the facility or wherever they're working. If you narrow Truesdale, it's the main artery that connects Burlingame Hills, Burlingame Estates, Hillsborough, Mills Estates for emergency services. We need to make sure we're connected to the county and the city emergency services in a timely manner. There's a lot of elderly people that do not ride bikes. There are disabled people that do not ride bikes. Truesdale is a vital route connecting our communities to the rest besides shopping and everything else. Down restaurants, everywhere in Burlingame. So the way the community is designed and up in the hills, there's a lot of young families now in the hills, and they do bring their students and they drop them off. It blocks one of the lanes. So if you have emergency vehicles, and believe me, I hear the sirens many times, especially during COVID, but you do hear sirens. And recently, my elderly mother had a respiratory failure, and they came fast. I would hate to think that someone needs emergency help and they can't get through Truesdale because you narrow it down for bikes. Believe me, I think students need to be safe, but there may be other solutions. You know, either lights at the crosswalks. And to be honest, I don't see people, I drive Truesdale many times. I do not see bicyclists, especially children, riding bikes down Truesdale. And to be honest, Truesdale, where the stop signs are, it is dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Ms. Harris, Margarita? Yes. I probably butchered that, didn't I? Is it Herss?
Heris.
Ah, got it.
Excuse me, Chair. Can we please have the microphone bent down so that I had trouble hearing the last? part?
Absolutely.
Thank
Yep.
Like that.
Yep.
I want to hear everything you have to say.
Thank you so much. Well, my name is Margarita Harris. We live in Truesdale. We have been living for the past 22, 23 years. We are very happy and proud to be a Burlingame residents. And it's not a day or it's not a night that at least 3 ambulances in 5 minutes are going up or down through. We have kids too, and we walk most of the time to school, to Franklin, to BIS, and until now, until today, I don't see the reason more than sports to go through Truesdale by bike. I see I see few sport people on Sunday morning going up Truesdale with the bikes, with this kind of bikes that has different speeds. But I think it's very crazy and irresponsible to leave a kid in Truesdale by bike. And I think it's a very good idea to stop the project that we're thinking about to put Truesdale with bike lines, with parking lanes, and with all this stuff, because in between the cars and the ambulance especially, it's not gonna be a space. I cannot say anything about the other, the Murchison, because even though I am very familiar with that, I don't have opinion for that. For Davis, I think Davis is a very good idea for bikes, and we need more, we need to teach the parents to drive, because everybody is in a hurry to take the kid to class because they are late. But nobody think about the kids that are in bikes. And yes, I believe that can be an opportunity to put the bikes in that way, but no intrusive, and don't touch anything, don't put anything intrusive more than signs and stop and drive your way and learn how to drive very well. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Pessimer.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Piesheimer, and I've been in Burlingame for about 30 years. This is probably one of the most incomplete studies that I've ever seen. I went to the meeting over at the rec center and asked questions, and a lot of questions weren't answered, and they're not answered again tonight. I'm just wondering how much as a taxpayer, if I'm paying or anybody else here is paying for this incomplete survey. I'm going to give you some examples. Commissioner Mardos asked some great questions about Casada Drive, and that wasn't included. I would have suggested in the proposal, if you had done an aerial photo going down on the street instead of just like as if you're driving down, it would give you a better kind of 3D view. In regards to the statistics, I still haven't seen them. I had asked how many bicycles were on the streets and how many cars. I was told by, I believe his name is Saeed at the city of Burlingame, that there was like 11 cars at the intersection of El Camino and Truesdale every day, and there's 11,000 cars. That's what I was told, and I have an email from it. So I guess my question is why is this all being proposed in the first place? If that's true, and my email has it, 11 cars and 11,000, or I'm sorry, 11,000 cars and 11 bikes? That seems ridiculous. Also, I was never told how many accidents. When there's an accident on a bicycle, sometimes it's actually the person on the bicycle, they have electric bikes now, and they fly through and drive all around. If somebody gets killed in a bike accident, is it always the car's fault? I don't know. Do we have those statistics? Do we know, or we're just assuming it's the car's fault? What is the cost of this complete between what we're paying you, sir, for I guess you're the one that's put this together, and then all the bike lane stuff? I'm just curious, has that been disclosed tonight? As a taxpayer, I'm curious. I'm in Burlingame a lot. I own a business here, and I really haven't met anybody until tonight that a couple people have spoke favorably for bikes. But even the firemen along California Drive have told me it was a horrible idea. And I've probably spoken to 50 to 100 people that can't stand California Drive bike lanes. We have it on Carolyn. So at what point do we just keep going? It reminds me of like people that have too much money to spend and too much free time. My kids lots of times wanted new shoes and they were dirty, and I said, wash them. We're not buying another pair. 2 bike lanes, one on Carolyn and one on California seems ridiculous to me. Why don't we use the money to fix the Broadway exchange under overpass if we really want to do something? Oh, I'm out of time. Shoot. Okay, well, thank you.
Mr. Poseimer. Right. Mr. Glass.
Hi, I'm a 7th CIS. I bike to school every day, and it is a terrible experience. It is terrifying because when I go, there's always cars coming up behind me. They're going really fast. Yeah. You have to swerve to the side, let the car pass, and it's going really close. And sometimes when I'm hanging out with my friends and I'm going down Truesdale, it's terrifying. Like you have to either go close to the cars or close to the parked cars and risk getting hit by a door. And when I go home, I usually bike down Davis. The cars are also going fast. So it's really dangerous. Not a pleasant experience. What I think should happen on Davis is if you put speed, it would force the cars to go slower, whereas the sheriffs remind them that bicycles exist when they already know that. On Truesdale, I think that the one with no cars parked would be the best because you don't really have to worry about doors and you can go to the side where there's a buffer. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Glass. Ms. Beatty.
Nice job.
Hi. We don't see a lot of people biking on Truesdale. That's because most people would consider it insane to bike on Truesdale because you could get hit by a car and die. That said, there are plenty of use cases where people might bike along Truesdale, one of which has already been said. Someone might wish to commute from home to the train station. And the other of which was just raised by my son, which is that BIS kids can and do bike regularly from BIS to the Burlingame Plaza. They already do this. You as members of the commission know that kids are far more likely to be hit, injured, and killed by cars when on bicycles than anybody else. Adding bike lanes doesn't just address the needs of cyclists, it also slows down the speed of traffic, making it easier for people to cross the street safely. And that includes hospital employees who might be crossing Truesdale to go get lunch at the Burlingame Plaza. It also includes people who might be walking across from a retirement home to the hospital. You commissioners also know that elderly people are the most likely people to be hit, killed, and injured by cars when on foot because they cannot nimbly leap out of the way or speed their way out of the crosswalk in front of a car. When it comes to cars, speed kills. 145 people, I just learned, were injured in traffic collisions in Burlingame in the last year. 13 of those were serious injuries or deaths. And there have been several pedestrians hit by cars in this direct design area, which is how we arrived here in the first place. This area was highly prioritized in the bicycle and pedestrian master plan as needing additional safety measures to make it safe for people to get around. We are driving too fast and it's injuring and killing people. About Davis, I hate to say it, I'm profoundly disappointed by this design. Davis cars travel at extremely high rates of speed up and down that street. Painting sharrows and directing kids and parents who don't know any better that this is the road that they're supposed to use to bicycle to school is reprehensible. I encourage the commission to do the right thing here and not adopt the sharrows and just say that we aren't able to create a route where it is safe for our kids to bike to BIS. And own up to it and then come back to it. But we cannot check this box as done. Thank you guys so much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Beatty. Mr. Harrods? Yep. Mr. Harrods?
Hi, my name is Ali Harris. I live in Thursdale Drive in past 22 years. And I would like for this plan, who's planning to do that, is stop by when is school, especially Franklin and BIS, going in and coming out, how is traffic? And then we are riding Thursdale Drive. We feel every at least 10 minutes, fire department and also ambulances going from there, which is, I wish was possibility extended that street that make it easy to ambulance and then fire department to go. But this plan fully blocked the way for the ambulance, especially ambulance and fire department. Why ambulance? Because it's over there right away is hospital is there, heavy traffic, all that area, one hospital, which is a lot of traffic. And I would like to let you know, I had a problem. I did go to hospital, even no room for illness people. All they line out in sidewalk, that means it's corridor. That much was traffic. And for that traffic, that much we have over there is ambulance, also fire department. Another is an exit to 280 highway, which is a lot of traffic. Sometimes even big bus, everything is coming, going to from there. That's the one. I wish, again, that who's doing this plan, when is school going in and is school coming out, just go take a look at it, how is traffic and how is going to be this plan mixed up all this um, uh, um, going to ambulance and especially ambulance fire department. Thank you very much. I would like people to pay attention for this. The one I speak about at the school and the traffic in that Thursdale Drive. Thank you. Have a nice day.
All right, thank you. We appreciate your comments. Mr. Catchia?
Hello, Commission. I do agree with staff's recommendation. I live on Arguello, up on the hill above Truesdale. I take Truesdale every day. My kids go to Franklin and BIS. We ride our bikes across, Truesdale and down. It is tricky. We grew up riding bikes. Kids have to be aware of these things. I agree with staff's recommendations of Truesdale not being involved in this because, as been mentioned, when it comes to school time there's late parents, there's aggressive driving. I don't think we're going to solve that with the bike plan or even more education. We do need to put our resources into a future vision of bikes and cars sharing the road. But Truesdale is a circumstance where we have police, we have fire, we have mostly fire and ambulance going up and down. We have high cluster times of people going to school. It just doesn't make sense to cause more restriction there. And we know the crossing guards, they're family friends. We're bringing bottles of wine for Christmas. They know it gets pretty crazy there. Even they get cut off by aggravated parents. We're not going to solve that by putting bikes through that area. It's a circumstance we can't control. But do good work, make bike safing safe other places. But I agree with the Truesdale not being part of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is it Andrea Baroni or Andrew Baroni? It must be an Andrew. Andrea, it is Andrea. Okay.
Andrea.
Baroni.
Hello, I live in Clarendon here, down here. Well, first of all, thank you for, considering the safety of, everybody, the kids and the community. But I was probably just commenting on the overall approach of the layouts. Why not considering bike lane time during peak times of bike lane if the purpose of the bike lanes are actually serving the commute for schools? You remove the cars from either, whatever location, you remove one lane, you do the share bike lane into the right or the left of the street at determined time, where the peak time of using cars versus bike versus cars, and then, with appropriate signage. If the school time is between, travel time between, place to A to B is 7 a.m. to 9, that's where you remove like street cleaning parking. You remove that time, there's no car in that space. The marking would be, I guess, share at the time. I don't know how to approach that, but you guys are the expert there. That could, because like the gentleman said, it's convenient, to just park the car in front of your house. That's all it is, right? If you are, have a collaboration of the residents to have the safety, that could be the option. And that applies there as well as, Rollins Road. I have an office, off of Rollins Road, and I bike myself. So that could be an alternative option to San Francisco. You have, time where you have to move your cars, right? I'm not saying to that extent, but that could be an option layout for sharing parking on one side or the other versus peak time of bicycle, because realistically, there is no 24 hours usage of bike lanes regardless. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baroni. Any other public comments, whether you've given me a request to speak or not? now's your chance. If not, then, okay, we'll close public comment. And commissioners, Mr. Wong, you've heard all the public comment, so now we have a decision. And I'm a little perplexed at how we should proceed, Mr. Wong, because we have 3 streets. If we reject one of them, if we reject any of them, then does the motion fail? Do we have to accept all 3? Or can we stipulate what we're approving in the motion?
Through the chair,
Yeah,
you can make your recommendation.
okay,
Ideally, when we go to city council, it's instant support that they're in line, but we'll look and see if there are some changes. If your recommendation, if we have the ability to review some of that and implement it to the plan. I wanted to point out one item as far as Davis for one folks, just clarification. It is the entire length from that facility from Albemarle to Casada.
okay,
Clarify that, that's what it was, but.
okay, all right. All right, Commissioner Israelit?
I was just going to say that, I also understand what you're,
Yep.
I'm wondering if we have a discussion, if we each make our comments, and then we can maybe see at the end of the comments how we are aligned, and if we can, make a motion at that point, or if it's getting too complex, maybe we could break it into three different.
I would break it up.
Yeah, what I would like to do is I would like to break the streets up and take them one at a time. My concern is that, as Mr. Wong showed in the diagram that he started the discussion with, we're at the end, really, and after tonight, if, let's assume everything is good and we like the plan, we all agree, whatever, it would move on, right? And it would go into final design. So I think we should take these one at a time and really support, not support, or support with changes. Yeah, Commissioner Brown, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. If I can ask one question, I think that will affect all 3 streets before we have a conversation.
Yeah, go ahead.
The speed of cars was mentioned in a lot of these comments. I don't know what the current speed limit is on those streets, but it has not been part of these proposals to reduce the speed limit on these streets. Is that, as we talk about other things, can that be considered, or can that be added to some of these conversations?
Thank you. Through Chair, Commissioner Brown, great comment. So for some folks, they may be aware, but, and a couple of members on the commission, the speed limits are determined by, there are counts being taken at the speeds, and it's the 85th percentile speed. That's how the speed limit is set. So for instance, on Truesdale, I believe it's 30 miles an hour, but the 85th percentile is 35. We have the ability to reduce it to 30 miles an hour, which is what it's at. So again, if you want to change it, it's more of a traffic calming to get the speed, that 85th percentile speed that's measured down. That said, and I think Ms. Beatty was there, as well as Chair Martos, but the Vision Zero project looks at these streets, and then they might have another mechanism where we can do some of that. For this particular project, we just won't be able to randomly drop the speed limit. We can increase enforcement. We can try to put up additional signs, and we do have some feedback signs that are going back up there. But that's the means we have now of trying to reduce the speed along the streets.
Thank you.
Okay, so commissioners, yep.
There, one other thing, I have the chart back up, but our next move would be to take it to council.
Correct.
Sorry.
Yep. So, yep, okay. I won't say anything further. All right, commissioners' comments? we
Do you
should.
want us to comment on each project set?
Let's start with Murchison.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with Murchison. So Commissioner Israelit, since you raised your hand. There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay, so for the Murchison, project, I am leaning toward the staff recommended project. Because I do think that emergency vehicle turning is imperative for that corridor. There are a lot of apartment buildings, a lot of seniors, living in that area. And, I'm concerned about people having trouble with that squared, turn into driveways as well. My only question, and I had sort of asked Commissioner Martos about this when we first got these materials to review, is in alternative 2, I would like to know if that center yellow striped no drive area could be made into a left turn lane. I think the bike lanes look extremely wide, and I understand having a buffer zone for parked car doors opening, but I don't know that they also need 3 feet on the other side, in that other buffered zone between the cars in motion. Bike lane looks wider than the car travel lane. And maybe it's just this rendition, but I would feel comfortable taking, a little bit away from the bike lanes on each side and putting in a center left turn lane, and going with alternative 2. That being said, if there isn't enough room and we can't do that, I'm fine with alternative 2 as it is presented tonight.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to go next?
No, we'll go online.
Sure.
So I agree with Commissioner Israelit. I'm not sure, and again, Mr. Wong, your team will have to kind of look at what that means from a bike lane perspective versus that center left turn lane. We will have to have people being able to access to make those left turns coming in each direction. So I do think that makes a lot of sense. I'd really just really want to understand what that does to the bike lane so that everyone still feels really safe in those bike lanes when they're in use. But I agree with Commissioner Israelit.
All right, Vice Chair Cauchi on Murchison, your thoughts?
So just one question. We have been talking about the driveways, but I never asked, how many driveways are there?
Through Chair, I don't have an exact count. I'm sorry, I don't have that info for you.
Do you think there's more than 5?
Along Murchison,
Yeah,
I'd have to look. I don't want to guess on that one.
okay. So my thoughts on Murchison are, we definitely need to take this to a stress level 1, since we're trying to encourage this to be families and students biking to school. So since the cars are driving over 30 miles per hour, we need to make sure that we have that buffer. So I definitely do not want to see a center lane added and any type of reduction in the bike lane. I think that would then be taking that not the direction we want to go. We want this to be stress level 1. If the cars are going 30 miles an hour or faster and they hit a bicyclist, they will kill the bicyclist, most likely kill the bicyclist. My vote would be for alternative 1, but I want to make sure that I do a vote that we move forward with either 1 or 2. I think that putting in the bike lanes, either ones, is a move in the right direction. But again, I want to make sure that if we go with 2, we do not take out the buffers.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Cauchi. Oh, yeah. So, we always struggle with having the perfect solution here, and there's never a perfect solution. Trying to pick the best solution is always the most challenging. So it's my opinion that I would go with alternative 2. And Mr. Wong, if you can add a center turn lane by narrowing the bike lane, but still keeping it safe, then that would be my recommendation on Murchison. And I'll keep it at that.
May I make one final comment?
Then everyone gets a chance to make a final.
Through the chair,
May.
Quick.
through the chair, just
Yeah.
for that, just maybe a clarification, just to answer some of the questions, maybe that change.
Why don't you go ahead before we.
So I have, between Magnolia and Ogden, there are 5 driveways on Murchison.
Okay.
Between El Camino and Magnolia, there are 4.
Okay.
I'd like to also point out if we were to reduce, the goal would not be to eliminate the buffers, but similar to Truesdale, reduce the travel lane width, reduce possibly parking, reduce maybe some of the buffers, but not eliminate them, just to pick up enough width that in total you can get a usable 2-way left turn lane. But just to put that in there, but.
So it's, sorry, it's possible to put a 2-way turn lane?
And between Magnolia and ECR, again, sorry, don't disagree. Next,
Right.
we'll go with an aerial.
Large.
There
Right.
will be a 2-way left turn lane between El Camino and Magnolia, that section.
Right, and that's the commercial part of the.
Correct.
So that would make sense. Maybe that's what we were thinking. But then, as I mentioned, but I think the street is going to change because it narrows, and you can't have the same topology when the street narrows all the way up to Sequoia.
And then for the section between Magnolia and Ogden, we can look at trying to, at first, we would look and see what we could reduce the cross section, either the travel lanes, the parking, the buffers, not eliminate the buffers, but reduce it to gain enough space to put in a 2-way left turn lane. That would be the approach we would take, first approach. And then the other case would be to leave it as is.
Yeah. Okay, and obviously, when you get up towards Mills High School, there's no way you could have, there's not enough room to.
Correct. That would be a class
2-way turn lane and yeah, okay. Okay. Commissioner Israelit?
Thank you. Well, I mean, the good thing is you probably don't need a 2-lane, center 2-lane, left turn lane across from the school because there's no really place that sort of shut off. The point I just wanted to also make is that a center turn lane also gives emergency vehicles an opportunity to use that as a drive lane. I've seen them do that. Where they, cars will pull over a little bit without necessarily pulling into the bike lane, and it gives emergency vehicles a travel lane when needed. How wide is the bike lane in currently in alternative 2? It looks like it's like 8 feet wide.
It is larger than 8 feet. Well, the bike lane itself is 6 feet. The buffer between the bike lane and the travel lane is 3 feet, and between the parked vehicle and the bike lane, it's 2 feet. So in total, it is.
So 11 feet wide for bikes going in one direction. This is
Correct.
not- I think that is extremely overly generous.
Through the chair, it's something similar to what's on Carolyn. We're able to have wider buffer.
There.
So that's what you would feel like.
Thank you for the information. Thank you for listening to me about the emergency vehicle.
Okay, any other comments on Murchison? No? Mr. Wong, again, I don't want to group all these and say, can I have a motion? I'd like to vote on these one at a time.
That's fine.
Okay. So who would like to make a motion on Murchison? You've heard a couple of concept recommendations. Commissioner Israelit?
I move that we approve staff's recommendation of Murchison Drive Alternative 2 with the addition of a center left turn lane acquired by reduction to a very small degree of the bike lane and perhaps the travel lane, car travel lane.
I second the motion.
Okay. So the motion made by Commissioner Israelit, seconded by Commissioner Brown. Ms. Brewer, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
Commissioner Israelit,
Aye.
Vice Chair Cauchi,
Oppose.
Chair Martos.
Aye. Okay, motion carries 3-1 for Wong. So that's, I don't know if that's a little different than what you, but you'll let council, the commission for that?
And we'll add to it, we go to count,
Okay,
we can make the adjustment, provide that option.
okay, okay. All right. So commissioners, we'll move on to Truesdale. And we heard a lot of feedback on Truesdale from the public. So comments on Truesdale, who wants to start?
Should we just do a row again? Seems to be working okay.
I was going to go in reverse order, but
should
if you want to raise your
Go.
hand again,
Go first.
you want to go first? All right.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Cauchi.
So I think Truesdale is a critical part of the connected streets that has been defined in the bike ped plan. In the bike ped plan, we did spend quite a bit of money. It was a little over 400K, spent several years, got lots of community input, and it was approved. So I do think it's important that we follow that approved plan. With that, I do think we need to do a better job of educating the community of the plan. And I do think we need to do a better job of the community understanding that if you don't bike, you still have benefits from getting people out of the car into the bike. But to do that, and we don't need a big percentage to get into the bike, a small percentage, but to do that, we do need to have connected streets. A bunch of dead-end bike lanes, people aren't going to bike on those lanes. So I am voting for alternative 2 on Truesdale. And for the part that's by the police station, alternative 3.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Cauchi. Commissioner Brown, your thoughts?
Yeah, as reviewing this and the notes that I've taken as well, I do agree that we have to take in consideration bikers. And I don't know what the numbers are as well, but if there's one person who wants to bike up this street, it should be safe for them. So I would also like to vote for alternative number 2 on Truesdale, because I do believe it leaves 2 lanes of traffic. And actually maybe even narrowing those lanes a little bit will make people drive a little bit safer and stay away from the bike side of the lanes. So I also agree with alternative 2.
All right. Commissioner Israelit, your thoughts?
I agree with the staff's recommendation of not building a bike path on Truesdale Drive. And these are my reasons, which I brought up at the previous meeting. First of all, it's a very heavily trafficked with car traffic road. And I'm on Truesdale all the time. I used to work at the hospital on Truesdale. My parents are currently in senior living in Truesdale, and they're almost every day. And both lanes of traffic, moving both east and west, are always utilized. It is a heavily trafficked road, and it is the link up to 280, down from 280 as well as up to 280. So I do think that we still need 2 lanes of traffic. And I think we can't eliminate parking, which is what the alternative that you had mentioned, because I can barely even find parking as it is. There's what was the Sunset, I think it's now Oakmont or something. There's the Truesdale, there is a rehab step-down unit across the street. There is the Red Cross. There are lots of businesses that require parking, and it's already short. It already is difficult to find parking to visit people in those care facilities. So I think eliminating parking, I mean, I don't know where people would even park for those. I had trouble going to visit my dad when he was in the rehab hospital, just even finding anywhere to put my car. There weren't any other options. I also worked at the hospital. I'm a physician, and there are ambulances going up and down Truesdale all the time. There are usually 2 ambulances at least parked at the emergency room all the time. And while I can understand that it would be nice to have bicyclists feel safe on Truesdale, the matter of the fact is there are other parallel roads that are much safer that we can build nice bike routes on. Bikes don't have to have a bike lane on every major thoroughfare, and emergency vehicles are imperative. I think they're the most important traffic on Truesdale. People's lives depend on it. I also think that we simply can't build, we've already been told we cannot build bike lanes from Marco Polo down to El Camino. The hospital said it just can't happen. So why would we build a bike lane for 2 blocks that goes really from nowhere to nowhere? It doesn't connect. It doesn't make sense to have lanes of traffic and bike lanes create for 2 blocks and then disappear for several reasons. It confuses drivers who may not be familiar with our area because they just got off of 280. And it makes bikes feel, it gives a false sense of safety to cyclists. They're in a bike lane. They may be kids coming from BIS. Then all of a sudden they want to go down and get a bubble tea or whatever, and there's no bike lane. They don't always compute that things change. I think it's unfair to cyclists. I think it's unfair to drivers. I think it's unfair to emergency vehicles and people who need our hospital. So I think our best option is maybe say Truesdale isn't the safest place to bike. There are other things going on there that are also important. Therefore, we recommend that you use parallel routes on Murchison and Davis. There are residential roads, like we said, that we can connect these routes using Sequoia. And I think that is hands down the most common sense solution. I feel very strongly, I'm sorry. But I have no doubts that that's the right thing to do. So I will vote along with the staff that there shouldn't be a bike facility put into Truesdale unless there's some major change in the usage of the hospital and businesses that are there now.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Israelit. And I agree with staff's recommendation. I failed to mention when we looked at Murchison, but I would like to see if we're going to not continue Truesdale up to Castaneda, that we add the route on Ogden that connects Murchison to BIS there at Truesdale, as stated in the staff's recommendation. Mr. Wong, right? So that's what I would be in favor of. And I just think that the street's too chaotic and busy with cars. It's an incredibly steep route, both up and down. And I think it'd be much safer for people to bike up Murchison if they wanted to get up the hill or one of the other side streets. But I think we leave that one with the staff's recommendation to just put in facilities between El Camino and California, and then that side street Ogden that would link up BIS to Murchison. So those are my thoughts. Now we should probably make a motion for something and then vote. I'm the chair, so somebody else has to do it.
I move to accept the staff's recommendation of not building a bike lane on Truesdale Drive.
Okay, I'll second that. Go ahead.
Commissioner Brown,
I oppose.
Commissioner Israelit,
I agree.
Vice Chair Cauchi,
Oppose.
and Chair Martos.
Aye. So the vote is 2-2. It does not pass. Is there another motion that somebody wants to make? You know what the vote's going to be pretty much, probably. So, Mr. Wong, we're inconclusive on this one. So you'll just have to let council know what our decision was. we didn't have a decision. If we had a fifth person, then we might have had a decision, but so be it. All right? But please bring up the recommendations by
Through Chair, it'll
Brown
be in the staff report.
and, yep, Vice Chair Cauchi in the staff report. Thank you. All right. So the last one is Davis. And Commissioner Brown, you haven't started, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to kick it off with
Yeah,
Davis.
that's fine. Thank you, Chair. So I think I had the fewest questions about Davis. Once Mr. Wong clarified the entire length of the project and where it was going to start and where it was going to end. So I didn't have very many questions about Davis at all. I'm going to I'll just flip through. Let me just get to Davis and take another look at it. But I think there were some recommendations for further bump outs and adding, making sure that there were crosswalks and curbs that were available for people to cross safely. So I'm going to take the staff recommendation for concept one on Davis with the caveat that the challenges that have been raised about bump outs are considered.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Next. Anybody else have comments? Commissioner Israelet?
I'll go.
All right.
Yeah, I think, I was part of the BIS school safety study. I thought that Miss, the woman in the police that lives, I remember when you spoke at that. I knew you looked familiar. So I think I am happy with the recommended concept. I'm really happy with the bump outs and the crosswalks. And I think that we know that those painted lines that visually narrow the road work in slowing traffic from Lion Hogue. So I think that it's a great plan for this street as well. And I do like the pop out, the sharrows that are green, white on green as opposed to green on white. They do sort of pop a little bit more. I will just say that, I did hear comments about making this bikes only in the morning, and I think that would be very unsafe. We have made Clarice one direction in the morning, and we still have cars. We have signs everywhere. We talked to the PTA. We still have multiple cars going the wrong way, and that really would be a recipe for disaster. So I just know that I did hear that comment, and in a perfect world, that might be great, but it's not a perfect world. So I recommend going with staff recommended alternative one.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Israelet. Vice Chair Cauchi, comments?
So I do like the lane striping as well and the added crosswalks. I think that those are, we've seen what the striping did slow cars down in Lion Hogue. So I'm assuming we'll see that as well. I do like the crosswalks. They're definitely needed in that area. I am going to continue to push for the bike priority because I do know that, there's been several reports that the sharrows don't really provide safety to the bicyclists. And someone made the comment about the funding. The funding actually went away last year. So the states will not provide grants for sharrows because it has not been providing the safety that we had all hoped. So I'm still pushing since we're not, we're undecided on what we're going to do with Truesdale. I think we'll see that Davis used more and more. So I would like to see us be open-minded, and could we do something with the bike priority on that street?
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair Cauchi. So my comments are, I heard be more aggressive. I also heard Mr. Glass and his comments and my thoughts. And then I heard that if we don't use the money to retrofit Truesdale, that there may be some money left over. so here are my thoughts. I agree. That's a very busy road in the mornings, in the afternoon, and children biking on Davis is very stressful, almost dangerous. I would recommend alternative one with some upgrades. And those upgrades would be your bulb outs, in addition to paint, something else. It doesn't need to be permanent. It could be the pylons, you know, the stakes, the plastic things. They're not great, but it's better than paint. And that may slow people down, pinch points to slow people down. I would love to see a speed hump somewhere on Davis. That would slow people down as well. And then the greenback sharrows all the way up to Casada. I think we already talked about that, but alternative one with those additions, you know, not just a painted bulb out, a real bulb out. And if we can put a speed hump in there somewhere, I think that would help tremendously. And those are my thoughts for Davis. Go ahead, Mr.
Just a quick, sorry, clarification. Those bulb outs would include the delineators.
Okay,
We
thought
sorry,
paint.
It's again, it's a 2D image,
Okay.
but I'll show a picture next
All
time.
right.
We will have
All right, all
that
right.
similar to Lion Hogue and what we have.
Okay.
And we can, even if this project goes in and then we deem that speed cushions are, after it goes in, we deem that that may be necessary to make this a bike boulevard, continue to make it, we can include those and then work through the commission as well of where we locate them and how many, just like that. So.
And it's a trade-off, right? I don't know if you need to be as aggressive as Carmelita with speed humps or speed cushions, but I would love to see at least one, you know, and I'll let you, in your expertise and your team's expertise, decide
And we'll
if any,
back here.
where. Okay?
We will.
Those are my recommendations for Davis. Okay, so really it's only one addition. All right, yeah, sure, Commissioner. Brown,
All right.
Go ahead. No problem.
Sorry, Chair. I just, on the speed bump, I just want to understand, and I agree there certainly can be something that slows the traffic down. Does that speed bump, and Mr. Wong, you'll be able to clarify this, is it curb to curb for those speed bumps? And will that also mean that those
Right.
kids that are biking are bumping over those speed bumps as well?
So through the chair, again, it depends on the width. And we use, just for this very case, we use a rubberized speed cushion, which we've been different effectiveness in different places of the city. Obviously, Lion Hogue, it's worked really well. Carmelita, we're looking at that again. We try to put a gap in there and it's curb, it goes the entire travel way, but not necessarily curb to curb. We can leave it open, but in the center, it's open for emergency vehicles to go through. The problem is you leave it too open on the sides, folks start trying to do that, but we look at, and again, the bicycles may have to go over it as well, but we try to accommodate.
Thank you.
All right, so, again, I'm chair, so I can't make a motion. So somebody else make a motion, please. What do we want to do with Davis?
Yeah, I move that we use the staff recommended concept number one, alternative number one for Davis.
Second.
Okay, does anybody want to add a speed hump?
I wasn't going to put that in.
That wasn't part of the motion.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown, did
yeah.
you want to add a speed hump to that?
I
Or leave it at?
believe that we need to look at the alternatives or additions to
right.
to the street for Davis. I again, the speed bump is, the kids are going to have to ride over.
Okay.
it. So that's the,
I agree.
So what I'm hearing, the motion is alternative one.
yes.
Okay, all right, and second by
Second
Commissioner
by-
Israelit. Okay, Ms. Brewer, please, roll call, vote.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Israelit,
Yep.
Vice Chair Cauchi,
Yes.
Chair Martos.
Aye, okay, so you have a unanimous vote on that one, Mr. Wong. And I think that's it for this now. Our recommendations and your plans and your report will go to council next. That's the next
And for the
step.
that are remaining, for the council meeting, they have a different notification process than the commission. So please look on the website under the council agendas And then you'll see this meeting eventually come up. Typically, the city clerk doesn't send notices out like some of you might have received previously. And I'll have to see if it goes in e-news. I don't see that part of it. So please be on the lookout for that because something won't, appear out there. We'll try to I'll check with our director and see if there's additional that we can do as public work. So try to get you folks notice.
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Hang on, I forgot. For the record, we had public comments on the topic, and the commissioners had an opportunity to review the public comment via email. So as policy and procedure, Ms. Brewer, can you tell us how many emails received on public comment and who the senders were, please?
So we received 10 emails for this particular project, and the emails were from, and I apologize if I'm butchering any names, I'm going to do my best here, an Ann Nanini, an Eric Chan, Takeshi Yamashita, a Gay Vanderleest, Kristen Jacobson, Y. Cheng, Manito Velasco, Sean Moran, Jerry Pell, and David Couchy.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, can I close this?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. Wong.
Okay, so I'm going to close item 6B, and we're going to go back to 6A because our consultant has been waiting for a very long time, very patiently. Hope you enjoyed all the drama.
Oh,
Your turn.
Through Chair, I believe she did have a question, Commissioner.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I just, for the public that's here, could, the meeting that will go in front of city council, since there won't be necessarily notice sent out, is that something that could go into the Burlingame e-newsletter to let people know? Or could you give them a ballpark idea of like, does this usually take a month to go before city council, 2 months? Just have an idea.
So to answer the last part first, it depends on when we can get on the agenda. And the second part is I can see how we can do it. Again, I'll have to check to see how we can do an additional notification. Definitely don't want to step on the city clerk's foot on this one. So whatever we can do, but it'll definitely be, it'll be somewhere when the agenda comes out, just review the agendas as they come out. You can see if it's an item. Sorry. That's the best I can do for now.
No, that's okay, because I know you put it in for this evening's meeting.
Yeah.
But that's for us.
That's us.
Thank you.
Okay. Members of the public, thank you very much. We appreciate your feedback very much. And you're welcome to stay for North Rollins Road bicycle plan and pedestrian improvement projects. All right. Thank you for waiting. You've been very patient.
All right.
Mr. Wong, you have are you going to do the presentation?
Through the chair, you do not want me. This is a much better presentation.
All right.
Aerial photos, everything. We have Ms. Julia Harbison with CSW doing the presentation tonight for North Rollins Road and Bicycle Improvement Project. I see one of our commissioners leaving. So again, this is an update to the community meeting that was held last month and gives the rest of the commission who wasn't able to attend kind of an overview and a little bit more details. We're keeping this project moving along because this one has federal funds attached to it, and there's just a process we have to keep going. We want to make sure we hit those benchmarks and not get back. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Harbison.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wong. And thank you all for squeezing us in tonight. I know it's going to be a little bit of longer night than maybe you would normally like. I'll let him bring up the presentation and then I can get started. Okay. So of course, as Mr. Wong mentioned, that we are on a timeline. And so that is why we were pushing to get this in front of you tonight so that we can move on to the next step and keep our project schedule. So this is our first visit here to you. We will have one later on in the process once we get our preliminary design completed to get some feedback before we go to final design. So next slide, please.
Sorry. Wrong button.
At least it's not me with the technical difficulties.
Mr. Wong almost never makes mistakes.
Sorry.
No.
We waited for you.
We waited for you.
He purposely took the
Everyone's been waiting.
presentation off the screen. You weren't in the room. Did you bring everybody water?
I could. I honestly could.
Oh, kidding. Kidding.
I think
Oh.
only when it does.
Next time I'll send you the PowerPoint. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's me. Why?
I think if you just go to the top of the screen, you can just do the next page. That's just going to zoom you.
Ending it. Oh. Sorry, folks.
Okay. So first, about the project. So we established a goal, or within the Bike Ped Master Plan, the general plan, and the North Rollins specific plan, Rollins Road was identified as a high priority corridor. And the goal was to re-envision Rollins Road as a complete street, applying a road diet to balance safety and connectivity for people walking and biking with vehicle circulation. And we had 3 goals for the project: connectivity, specifically connecting people from Broadway all the way to the transit center in Millbrae, that's just at the end of Rollins Road. The safety, which means managing vehicle speeds and conflict points between various modes of transportation. And then, of course, feasibility, making sure that we design something that could be met with the current funding that we have. Okay. So the project limits, there we go. For the North Rollins Road project, as you know, there's not actually a North or a South Rollins. It's just Broadway as our break there. But this project goes from Broadway all the way to the north to the city limits, and it's a 1.3-mile corridor. So the existing conditions. So currently, the northern portion of North Rollins Road is primarily industrial and commercial, but mixed with other uses, while the southern portion is exclusively industrial and commercial uses. Now, the current roadway cross-section has 4 vehicle lanes with parallel parking on both sides, 5-foot pedestrian sidewalks on both sides, almost the entire route, except for a very small 100-foot sidewalk gap within that first block north of Broadway, near the substation. And then in the southbound direction, we have a 4-foot Class 2 bike lane, and in the northbound, we have a Class 3 shared bike lane. Sorry, next slide. So, what is the experience? Drivers can travel freely in both directions for vehicles, but they actually tend to choose the inner lanes. That was something that actually surprised us when we were doing our studies. Pedestrians can generally walk as the sidewalks, they meet the standards, but there are some locations, 2 specific locations, where there's actually not curb ramps. So you have to be physically able to walk to get from one side of the driveways to the other. Now, bicycles, that's a little more dicey, particularly in the southbound direction, where the Class 2 bike lane is so close to the parked cars that there is the problem of the car opening and the bicyclists in the Class 2 bike lane having to swerve out into the travel lane to be safe. And then, of course, in the last presentation, there was a lot of discussion about the effectiveness of sharrows and their lack of effectiveness in reality. Okay, so next page. So, what are the characteristics of North Rollins Road? Well, there are limited pedestrian crossings. Right now, there's only 3, and they're all in the portion of that corridor. So if you are in the northern portion of the corridor, to safely cross the street, you could have to walk as much as half a mile, or technically leave the city of Burlingame, go into Millbrae, and then cross the street. So that doesn't seem reasonable for the corridor that's being re-envisioned. There's also numerous driveways. The question came up, how many driveways on this road? More than 20. I was trying to count before we even, I started talking, but there's a lot of driveways along this corridor. The on-street parking is highly utilized, somewhere between 80 and 90% when we were out there doing our counts. And then transit service is provided by the Burlingame Bayside Shuttle in a northbound direction only at this time. Sorry, next slide. Okay, so now I mentioned that the, goal was to use a road diet, but was also to, let me back up. There were a lot of planning studies done already for the master plan, for the bike and ped master plan, as well as the North Rollins specific plan. But as we know, the world has changed a lot in the last 5 years. So we went out there and we did another traffic study where we got data that include volumes, speed, and class of vehicle. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we covered, which was speed, and now the posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour on Rollins. We found out that the 85th percentile speed, which is supposed to be the design speed for the road, exceeds that 35 miles per hour. In fact, in the northern portion of North Rollins Road, it's 45 or 44 miles per hour, and it's 38 miles per hour in the southern portion. The thing to note is, for some reason, it's weekdays in the afternoon around 3 p.m., almost daily, the speed limit reaches 85 miles an hour going through there. It was consistent. Next slide. Okay, so when it comes to actual vehicle class and type and count, the corridor has a high proportion of large vehicles. Now, that's not actually surprising. There's a lot of industrial use. So the overall vehicle count is share is between 5 and 10% of the total count. You would think for a multi-use arterial like this, it would be more like 5%. So we're on the higher end within this corridor, but again, not to be expected. Now, the capacity of Rollins Road is 36,000 vehicles. The actual usage, 36,000 vehicles per direction. The actual usage is about 3.5 times less than that. So we're less than 10,000 average daily trips in each direction on that road. So you take our average daily trips, you multiply it by 3.5, and that's what you get at the capacity of the current road. Next slide. Okay. So in summary, our vehicle speeds are too high. The capacity is too high for the usage. The type of bike facilities present are inappropriate for the volume of vehicles, the speed that are being driven. And pedestrian connectivity is currently poor in a few locations. Now, as I also mentioned, that there was the desire for the road diet. We didn't take that on fact. We went ahead and we actually did an assessment of the feasibility of a road diet. So, next slide, please. So we used the Federal Highway Administration guidelines, and there you'll see like 1 to 3 stars are shown there. 1 star means that it doesn't really meet the intent of the criterion. 2 stars means that it meets the criterion with some additional consideration. And 3 stars means that it very much meets the criterion. And there are 5 criterion that have been outlined by the Federal Highway Administration. There's the average daily trips are less than 25,000 ADT, which is per direction. And that is very much the case. We are in about 10,000 ADT. The peak hour count is at or below 750 vehicles per hour per direction. That's important to know. And we are about half of that. The travel speeds for a road diet, are we exceeding the 85th percentile or the design speed for the road? And we very much are, between 3 and 11 miles per hour over. Next slide, please. Then, has this been identified by other planning studies within the community, which it has, to have a road diet? Both the Bike Ped Master Plan and the North Rollins Specific Plan identified a road diet along this corridor. The one item where we don't get 3 stars is the freight use. We are, as I said, on that slightly higher end. What you would expect for a road like this would be closer to 5, and we're between 5 and 10, though 5 and 10 is within the criterion. It is just some consideration needs to be made for those larger vehicles as we go forward with our design. Now, Road diet feasibility. So the existing conditions are uncomfortable for people walking and biking. Vehicle capacity far exceeds the demand. Previous planning efforts have identified this for a road diet, and per the Federal Highway Administration guidance, it is feasible to implement a road diet at this location. Now, we have been doing quite a bit of outreach, and it's been a challenge along this corridor to do outreach with the community. So next slide, please. Now, where we are in our process is that we're still in the existing conditions and our design options phase. So we have not fully technically put pen to paper when it comes to a preliminary design. What we have done is we have had our first workshop with the community on February 12th. It was not very well attended. So we, and of course now we're at the Teaspoon meeting, and we will be going back to the public with our preliminary plan. And of course, we will then bring that plan with revisions back to Teaspoon for one more go. Now, next slide, please. So as I said, we've had our one community outreach meeting, but partly because we knew that it was going to be hard to get people present, we actually sent a member of my team out there with leaflets, and they leafleted every single business along that corridor. He talked to anyone he could talk to and got a lot of verbal feedback. So we, just to alert the community that there was going to be a meeting, but also other ways with which they could communicate with us. We have directly reached out to 20 stakeholders along the corridor. And of those 20 stakeholders, we were able to hold 5 virtual meetings with them and have one-on-one feedback. We also had an online survey, which had only 16 respondents, which actually was better than we were hoping for. And that was as of March 7th when we prepared these slides. So I'm going to quickly run through the feedback that we got on these cross sections. So part of what we took to the community was 5 cross sections. And we got their feedback on those cross sections. And I'm going to tell you, you don't have to comment on these cross sections. Some of you already have that attended our meeting, because we've taken their feedback both in all of these other previous outreach and came to 3 concept plans to bring to you today. But the first concept A, the big takeaway is people had mixed reviews, but it was pretty 50-50, pro and against. And in our other outreach efforts, we did get a lot of 50-50 on doing anything along the corridor, is what I'm going to say. There was aggressive dislike for option B, which was protected class 4 bike lanes, because you lose parking in that option. People were not akin to that. So the next slide. Then people really didn't like option C as well, because you lost all parking, but you did not have a road diet. People were not interested in that. And then option D was again a little bit more mixed. It kept the parking, but there were concerns specifically about limitations on truck movement in those scenarios. And then I think we have one more. Yeah. And then of course we included option E, which was consistent with the North Rollins, the North Rollins specific plan as well. And that one was very much not liked either. So we took all of that, all of the feedback that we got, all of the studies that we've done, and we've created 3 conceptual plans. And I'm going to run through very quickly some slides with the cross sections, but then we can switch over, and I have strip maps of everything so that you can understand the limits of where these would apply along the corridor. And the big thing to take away, and you can go ahead to the next slide, is to understand that we envision North Rollins Road in 2 segments. There is the portion that's going to be part of the North Rollins specific plan and the type of development that's going to be coming in there, or that's already coming in there. I know, they have one project under construction now. I know there is planning submittals going in for the vacant lot now. So it is already transforming. So when we're looking at this, we are trying to understand where is that portion going to be, who are going to be the users in the future. But we also have to understand that the southern portion of this corridor is industrial and commercial, and we have to keep serving those types of users. Mm-hmm. So that's why you will see 2 types of cross sections. There's the northern portion and the southern portion of this corridor. Oh, we're still on to that one. Sorry. This is concept plan 1. Now, the thing to take away from concept plan one, on the left side, you have your North Rollins specific plan area corridor portion. But then immediately below that, you also see the North Rollins specific plan area build out. And I think that's important to understand because when a developer comes in, they're required to make certain public improvements along the corridor. And so behind the curb line, they're supposed to put in street trees or parkway of some kind, a wider sidewalk. That's all required, it's baked in, it's always conditional on those projects. So even though what we're doing right now is curb to curb, the corridor, you need to be able to see the whole thing to understand what it'll look like in the future. So that's why you'll see two cross sections there. It is the same curb to curb cross section, but the improvements that would come as developments come online along North Rollins specific plan area, that is what you're seeing on that lower section. So the big takeaways is that we've got class 4 buffered bike lanes on both sides of the street. We do implement a road diet with this one. The speed limit is still 35 miles per hour per this design. And the other thing to note, of course, is that it is consistent with the bicycle and pedestrian master plan preferred section. That's concept one.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Yes.
So you're saying if I look up at the right upper, that's what it'll look like after your work is done. But if I look at the lower left, that's what it'll look like after the developers come in.
So you want to go straight down. So straight up above that is what you would see in the North Rollins specific plan area.
Okay.
And immediately below that is that section
Okay.
once it's built out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
May I ask a question? Then I'm confused. Then what is the one specific plan area to Marsden Road?
That is, okay, so that's the area from the southern portion of, there's not a
southern
great
borough.
street to
Okay.
call it out, unfortunately. There is a line, and you'll see it when we get to the strip map. There is a line that we call out, and that is the defined limits of the North Rollins specific plan.
Okay.
And so it's from that portion to the south towards Broadway.
Thank you. I
Yes.
So
And to be clear, there are not hard lines. There will be transition zones as we go along. So whenever cross sections change, you can't just immediately go from one to the other. We do have to transition. There isn't much of a transition through this, as you'll see, but the one thing you're not seeing here is there's a third section for this that has to do with what happens at the fire station, which is a little bit different, and you will see that on the strip map. But this is me trying to give you an idea of generally what is going on here. Okay, so that's concept one.
So I don't see a difference between the two on the top.
That's
There's
because
supposed to be a difference?
much of one, you can't quite see it. There's a slight
Okay.
change when you get onto the map, but at this point, it is virtually identical as you go along.
So this implies that the entire North Rollins Road from Broadway up to Millbrae Avenue is the same configuration. Is that right?
Well, it would be
In this
city
plan?
limits, not to,
Wherever it ends up.
yeah.
Okay.
Millbrae, yeah.
Okay.
So we are south of Adrian with
Okay.
that, yeah. So yes, one thing you will see when you get onto the strip map is we actually do have an alternative section
Okay.
to the portion from the southern portion of the South Rollins specific plan. I really should have come up with a better name, to Marsden, because there are concerns about having sufficient clear space for vehicles to make large turning movements. And it's a consideration that we are exploring. So you'll see that when we get to the strip map, but what that is that would be a class 4 southbound, but a class 2 northbound with the bicycles on the travel lane side of the parked cars. Okay.
And sorry to interrupt, is it Marsden or Marston? Marston.
If-
Okay, the map is Marston. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, so concept plan 2. So this particular version here is a class 2 the whole way. And you won't really see any differences between the northern and southern portion as well. It does have a road diet. It is consistent with the North Rollins specific plan preferred cross section. But one thing to note is for a class 2 bike lane along a corridor with this type of vehicle volume, we would have to reduce the speed limit to 30 miles per hour to support a class 2 bike lane. It would be considered unsafe at the current 35 mile an hour speed.
Especially with the guy going 85.
Yeah, especially with going 85.
But-
However, one would hope,
Doing that.
you know, with the reduced lane widths and basically narrowing of the corridor visually, that would slow people down.
Can we go back and look at the other slide real quick, just so I can compare the two?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we can go on to concept 3. So this is incorporating, we did get some feedback that the implementation of a more structural protected bike lane was preferred. The thing to note now this is where you will see differences between the northern portion and the southern portion of the corridor. Within the North Rollins specific plan area, we would actually include a planter strip with, you know, street trees or some sort of landscaping to buffer between the vehicles and the bicyclists. The thing to note in the North Rollins specific plan area is that does mean we lose parking on one side of the street, which is part of why the similar cross-section in our initial cross-sections was very much disliked along this corridor. And as you can see the, you know, the interim condition, which would be what we would build, and then the full build out would have trees on both sides. Now, when you get into the southern portion, rather than have street trees, we would narrow up the structural buffer. There wouldn't be any planting there, but we would be able to keep parking on both sides. It's a little bit more of an industrial feel to that section, so it felt appropriate for that particular corridor. Yeah, okay, so now I'm going to throw you a curveball. And Mr. Wong, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the strip maps, I think it will make things a little more clear. I know there's a lot of cross sections and I'm trying to give you a lot of data at once.
It's a good presentation, so thank you.
While Mr. Wong is bringing that up, you mentioned about truck movement early on when you were talking.
Yes.
Is that when you meant on the southern part, trucks having to turn?
Yeah, so it has to do with how vehicles are currently getting in and out of their facilities. Now, the unfortunate truth is there's a couple of facilities where they back in off Rollins, which is not great. But unfortunately, they have pre-existing buildings. Their loading docks are oriented such that that is the way it is. We have talked to many of them. You know, thankfully, we were able to reach out with Aeronet, for example. They're the ones with the really large driveway along Rollins, like over 100 feet, and find out what they're using. So how much can we reduce that, you know, width of that driveway? But, you know, for example, they back into their loading docks. That's the unfortunate reality of their system. So understanding how those vehicles that do so all day, you know, from 8 to 5 are backing in and how does that impact? So if we are narrowing things up, there is the concern, you know, in that more southern portion that we could be potentially blocking a travel lane when vehicles are backing in. So, but they can, in all three of these concepts, turn in and out without any issue from both directions. Where the concern is backing in for a few specific locations. And to some degree, in some areas, it's not as big an issue because even today, there is no parking permitted across the way. So that does leave a little bit more room. But there are a couple locations that we have concerns about utilizing that. So, and yeah, if you want to scroll down, I can, yeah. We can just work from here.
Okay.
So let me explain a little bit about what you're seeing here. There's a lot of colors, but it's just so that we can understand and understand where transitions are occurring, as well as what cross sections we're applying where, but also to identify locations where we want to make some accessibility improvements, as well as install crosswalks. Because right now, as I mentioned before, there's only crosswalks in the southern portion of this corridor. And especially if we're bringing in residential in that North Rollins specific plan area, we need to be making considerations. And there's some places where it happens very naturally. There's already an intersection. So it's just a matter of, you know, placing in some high visibility crosswalks and maybe implementing some rapid rectangular flashing beacons or advanced signage of some kind. We haven't finished our analysis yet on what would be the appropriate methodology, but it is most likely, depending on the speed limit that is chosen, or, depending on cross-section, that will bear out what the more appropriate protective measure is. Additionally, there may be considerations for, particularly with a mid-block crossing, with a pedestrian shelter zone in the road diet cross-section. In that two-way turn lane, it is an appropriate place to give somebody to have refuge in a crossing where someone's not expecting one to be. So this is our concept one. I am assuming this is concept one. It's okay. So from the city limits, you see there's sort of that pinkish color, that salmon color. That's our transition zone. That's where we're having to transition from what is going on in Millbrae on Rollins Road and with what we are able to, apply here in our cross section. So that's the first thing that we would be doing is our transition zone. So then we would be going into our 2 Class 4 bike lanes, and those would continue on towards the south with our 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. And as you can see there, we're proposing 2 crossings at the intersections, and then we're proposing 1 mid-block crossing there. Or actually, sorry, those are 3 at the intersection. The mid-block crossing is a little farther south as we go. Now you start to see, you can see there's that red line in there. That is the edge of the North Rollins specific plan. Once we get out of there, that is where we have sort of our 2 options that I mentioned, which are continuing on the 2 Class 4 bike lanes the whole way, or upgrading the existing Class 2 to a Class 4 and upgrading the current Class 3 to a Class 2. And what that would do is that would permit a wider, open zone for maneuvers and such to occur. And then, as I mentioned as well, there is the green. And what is going on there is that is the proposed cross-section at the fire station. And no matter what option that we are, or concept that we are looking at, that area is stripe improvements only. We won't be proposing putting any parking or anything. It's what is the current condition. So all of those improvements are simply striped. It is a wider buffer on the bike lanes. Where parking does exist, that would be maintained, but where it doesn't, it wouldn't occur. Then, of course, we continue south, where we have our 2 options. And then you'll notice that everything that I've said, it all stops at Marsden, and we would transition as we get there. That is because what is going on at Broadway could be significantly impacted by extending a road diet and those bike lanes up there. And that intersection is more complicated, or we would make the movements at that intersection too complicated for drivers. So all of our improvements, except for potentially ramp reconstruction, crosswalk striping, revitalization, and then of course the gap closure that I mentioned in the sidewalk would be the limits of our improvements in that last block. So that is concept 1. I know you asked some questions before, and I'm sorry, it is a very big map, and unfortunately, to get all that information on in that corridor, I can answer any questions that you have on that, or we can go on to concept 2.
I just have one quick question.
Yes.
Looks like we're ending at Millbrae Avenue, is that right?
No, we're ending at the city limits.
Adrian, looks like.
If you go all the way to, yeah. So that's the city limit.
Okay, so how much further is it to the train station?
Adrian's like
This is Adrian.
block right after In-N-Out Burger.
It's about a block and a half.
That's what
A block and a half?
Panera.
Yeah.
things open.
Have we talked to Millbrae to coordinate doing this all the way to the train station?
Through Chair, I'll check with my colleague, Mr. Yang, who has previously worked with Millbrae. So he's had conversations, but regarding the specific one, I'll double check.
Because they are spending quite a bit of money in that area right there, so might be a good opportunity to coordinate with them. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Can I
And
ask-
one thing to note, of course, in that area, it is the channel is the city limits. So there is a slight narrowing at that bridge, but there should be enough room. It is still 4 lanes, but it does go to Sharrows in the existing condition once you get over there. So it is a little bit of a narrowing, but there should be the ability to do something if Millbrae is
That's enough
willing.
reason to coordinate with them.
Yeah.
So can I ask, roll back to Marston,
Mhm.
please, Mr. Wong? All the way, keep going. Right there. So things change dramatically at that point, right? We lose bike lanes and other things. Okay,
That's correct. Yeah, it's sharrows once you get
Yep.
the existing condition as well.
okay. Okay. So what we're seeing here in these conceptual plans start kind of at Marston and go
Yes.
north. Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Mhm. And that will be consistent through all three concepts.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's concept one. Concept two. Yeah, that's the correct one. So this one, I don't know that we need to necessarily zoom in. I think that we can do this more at the high level now that we've walked through and I've pointed out, because this is a continuous application of the cross-section the whole way. The only places that we have transitions are when we transition at the fire station and then when we transition at our endpoints. So this would be the class 2 the whole way. And the thing to note about the class 2 is that it would just be a 5-foot bike lane, and then we'd have a 2-foot striped buffer, but that would actually be between the parked vehicle and the bicyclist to, protect against that swinging door right now that is always of concern. And again, we would have to reduce the speed limit to 30 miles per hour along the corridor to apply this. Any questions about this one? It's same crosswalks and pedestrian improvements that were proposed on concept 1 are actually proposed on concept 2 and concept 3. Okay, then we can go to just concept 3, which is where you'll see lots of color. So this is where we would be applying, the North Rollins specific plan. You will see that it does go a little bit past the edge of the North Rollins specific plan because the limits actually jog. So we would extend so that it's a continuous cross-section before we transition in. Now, the thing to note is you can see in this strip map, there's actually a jog in that transition because we're going from having parking only on one side to having parking on both sides. So the lanes would in fact jog, as would, actually, no, the bike lanes themselves would not jog. It would just be the travel lanes for the vehicles that would be jogging and the two-way turn lane. And then again, of course, we have the specialized section for at the fire station, transitioning back, and then of course, ending at Marston.
So what side of the street in the North Rollins area is going to have the parking, east or west side?
I think at this point, we were looking at having it be, so if I'm going to the north, the east side, I believe, the northbound travel lane direction.
Okay,
But that is not something that has necessarily been set in stone.
okay. And the new housing's on the west side of
That's correct.
Rollins?
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason to put it on the east side is for businesses?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
That is consistently the one bit of feedback that everybody agreed on, which was don't eliminate parking.
Yep.
I've gotten pro bike lane on one side, don't do anything. I've run the gamut from a lot of the feedback that we've gotten. So it has been an interesting mixed bag. The one thing I will say is, as I mentioned, that one of my staff members, walked the entire corridor. He noticed that the farther north he got, the more pro-road diet people were. That was the sort of an interesting thing that we noticed, that the farther south you came, people were less inclined for road diets and just not open to the whole concept. But the farther north you got, they were, which was interesting feedback. Any other questions on this particular concept? Have I tired you all out? I can throw out more cross-sections. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. And I appreciate all of the questions, and I would very much also appreciate all of your feedback. What we're hoping to get is some direction from you as to which concept to advance or which two concepts to advance to focus our future design.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you for the presentation. Mr. Wong, do we normally do on informational items like this, public comment?
Through your chair, it's under our, yeah, we could take some, and with some of the folks here, it's another opportunity to get more feedback, so.
Yep, yep, okay, since
You
the
commissioners.
feedback wasn't outstanding, but let's start with any questions from the commissioners?
I have a few.
All right,
Make sure we got to ask questions.
all right, all right.
So I have a question, couple questions. Okay. We talked about concerns about the truck move. Now I understand what you mean, and that's really specific
Mhm.
areas. And maybe they can have an employee that, you know, has to come out,
Mhm.
safety reasons, in a vest and help them back in, whatever. What about just generally truck loading and deliveries to those industrial or more commercial businesses? Are there other areas? I mean, do you think that that's going to block traffic or cut across bike lanes in general when the normal course of?
Well, there will be, it depends on which cross-section, that we are concerned with. So for example, when we're utilizing the class 4 bike lanes, now, if a vehicle is leaving the facility, there should be enough visual triangle, even with the cars parked, several feet away from the curb to see out, but with like a big rig truck. However, with a passenger vehicle, they might pull forward into the bike lane to be able to see around because they're lower to the ground.
Okay.
So that, I mean, that is a consideration.
And then my other question was, when you came up with the data to justify why we need a road or why a road diet is got 3 stars for pretty much everything with 2 stars for one. How does the fact that we're actively trying to increase residential density in North Rollins, adding hundreds of units, I mean, are we putting the cart before the horse? Because we're going to be actively adding drivers.
That is a very good question. It is definitely one that we asked as well when we were doing our analysis. Now, the thing to remember, and is some pretty key numbers, currently with 2 lanes each direction, we have 36,000 average daily, or capacity for 36,000 average daily trips along that corridor. We currently only have between about 8 to 9,500 ADT per direction along that corridor. So yes, and even eliminating a lane, it is not going to be having any significant impact to level of service or capacity. It's like a bucket. We have a really big bucket right now. We're talking about going to a smaller one, but there's still not going to be enough water to overfill it.
Okay, thanks. That was just my own questions.
Other questions?
Yeah, I definitely had the same question about, obviously, there's going to be a lot more residential on that street and we're going to add. So if we're at 36,000 now and we're going to take, one of the plans was to take a lane away in each side.
Mhm.
Let's just say you go down to 18. Right, you're going to literally cut the traffic flow.
Yeah, when you remove a lane, it doesn't entirely cut it in half.
Okay, but so,
Yeah.
and we're going to add residential. So that capacity.
Yeah, that capacity is still, there's still sufficient capacity
Still
in
think
that,
there's
yeah.
still capacity there.
No, that was, so I am a civil engineer, not a traffic engineer.
Okay. Oh, and I'm just.
No. So I had the exact same question for our traffic engineer.
Right.
So what you're asking is a very good question. It is the same one I had, because I was like, does this make sense? We're going to be adding all these vehicles. They said, even with the density that's projected, it should be sufficient.
Okay, the other question I had was, you have a specific plan and a build-out plan.
Yes.
If we have an idea what's going to happen, is there a reason why we don't do it all at one time?
Feasibility.
Just from
From
how long?
money, the second you start to touch the curb, which is why like concept 3, for example, is going to be considerably more expensive than concept 1 or 2, which is largely a striping area or striping exercise, but with some safety, crossing improvements, as well as just some infill and accessibility improvements. Yeah,
All right, those were the two questions that I had, but thank you.
yes.
This is a lot of information. It's incredible. So
I
be
promise.
up all night.
Yeah, I promise next time to not bring you quite so much information.
No, it's good. It's good. It's presented well. It's just,
Thanks a lot.
what?
I do not have any questions. I have
No question?
comments.
Comment?
But are we
Let me ask a
comments
couple.
now?
Let me ask a couple
Okay.
first, and then we go to public comment and then my comments. So
Okay.
I was curious
I swear I silenced my phone.
about the 85 mile per hour clocking that you made. Was that a one occurrence, a daily occurrence?
It was
Happened more
7
often?
days that we had the sensors. It was on the northern sensor. The one on the southern, I believe, registered about 75. So I guess they got up speed as they were going, because they occurred in very close succession along there. So somebody was going, they were booking it along there. And it was on multiple days. I think it was on 4 of the 5 weekdays around 3 o'clock.
Wow.
Sergeant, can we
Funny,
have
right when high school gets out.
somebody?
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay.
At 3, you said?
It was around 3 o'clock, yeah. It was like,
Southbound from southbound from Millbrae Avenue?
no, I think it was northbound too, actually. But I don't want to say that. I have to go back and look at the data, remember.
Yeah, maybe if we could have Sergeant that passed on and maybe somebody be there around that time.
I'm our corporal. I'm the only traffic officer right now in Burlingame. Pretty much.
Oh, really?
Yes, I take all the collisions. I do all the traffic.
Okay. So that was one question. So, okay, it was more than one incident. All right, that's concerning. That's alarming, actually. Let's see. Oh, and then I was concerned about the delivery trucks and so a lot to digest, but in your plan, most of the industrial areas are they south of the fire station? Are they kind of mixed in with the
They're
north of the fire station, south of the fire station?
so it's both sides of the fire station.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it goes to a certain point on North Rollins where the residential is going to start to be
Yes. Yeah.
more of the.
Yeah. As they have the one that's under construction now, and I know that there's the vacant lot near Aeronet that is.
Yeah.
They're starting to move forward with something there.
Yeah, because my thoughts, my concerns a little bit are if we do a road diet, are we going to have delivery trucks blocking the road and things like that, taking up space and
It's
blocking?
to depend on the maneuvers. Like right now,
Yeah.
if they have a standard turn in,
Yeah.
their delivery and leave, that shouldn't be problematic
Sure.
at all. They can even stop in the 2-way turn lane. We did see some people, I think because it was easy, double parking, out there on Rollins
Yeah.
to unload, even though there was a driveway they could go in. I think it was just easier than having to make the maneuver in. So they were double parking in that outer lane. I unfortunately wasn't able to get pictures of it because at the time we were, doing some other things, but that was what was going on there. So it is the only time when there is any concern of something like that happening is in the 2 or 3 locations where people would be backing up. And that is only really if there's parking on the far side. If there aren't, we can do something to jog the lane around to ensure that doesn't happen. But that is the only place where that is of concern.
Okay, and you can, before you go to design, you can get data on how many delivery trucks
Yes.
go up and down that road on a daily basis?
Well, we have the data now
Yeah, okay,
on that type of vehicle already.
okay,
The bigger concern for me is, well, how many vehicles daily are going into those specific locations?
right,
And so we've been doing outreach, and one facility has been very open with us
okay.
and is working with us. The other 2 we're still trying to get some communication with.
Okay, and then the last question on the community outreach Are the surveys still open?
Yes.
They are, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and do we have on e-news or something where people can,
So there was a
Use the-
blast for that, I believe, 2 different times. Mr. Wong can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
To announce that survey to people, as well as announcing the various other outreach events we've been doing.
And we can go ahead and keep it going. I'll let the,
yeah, I mean, if the
Yeah.
survey's still open, blast it out again, right, until the survey closes. That would be my preference, because the response has been low, but,
Mhm.
you know, let's just keep it going.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. I want to allow the public to speak. Oh, another one?
through the chair,
Sure.
just answer one question for Commissioner Brown.
Sure.
When we add the future traffic on there, you have to recall, we're not adding it on top of this. All the developments going out there, you have to remember there's existing use out there right now. So there's kind of a credit, if you want to say. So it's not just merely all this traffic. You have to deduct that traffic and put that on there. So there's some credit. So it's not just literally doubling. It's less than double, but something like.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you for that clarification.
All right. So I'll take public comment now on this North Rollins Bike and Ped Improvement Plan. Mr. Swire?
Yeah, thank you to members of the committee, staff for the great discussion. I would really encourage the committee to think not necessarily about how the new plan will adapt to the past, as opposed to what you guys want to see with the future. I've heard a lot of people saying, what about the existing delivery trucks? What about the plans for adding all these new drivers, et cetera? You guys have an opportunity here, just like we did previously, with designing what you want Rollins to look like in the future. Do you want people to, you're going to add a lot more housing there. That's true. Do you want those people to move there to be people with 5 cars or 1 car? People that bike and use the Millbrae train station, or people that drive everywhere? These are the types of decisions I'd really hope you guys focus on, instead of trying to accommodate our car-centric 100 past years of dependence on autos and developing a very expensive and deadly infrastructure, and focus on what we really want this thing to look like in the future. I'd encourage you to go for, I think it was Plan 3 with Class 4 everywhere. That really is what satisfies the 8 to 80 requirement in terms of getting more people to bike. I don't know why you're looking at 35 miles an hour, honestly. Why do we need 35 miles an hour of traffic? I mean, this whole distance is probably 2 miles. If we lowered that to 25, which drastically reduces the fatality rate, what are we going to shave? 8 seconds maybe off somebody's daily commute? That seems like a worthy trade-off for me. We talked a lot about statistics, how many cars are here, how many delivery trucks, et cetera. I haven't heard one discussion of how many people have died, how many people are hit daily, how many people want to bike. Again, let's think about what we want this to look like and the reason that we're doing it. You know, in terms of parking, most of this corridor right now is businesses. We shouldn't be obsessing about providing free parking to businesses. If businesses need parking, they should be willing to pay for it themselves. That's what I do at my apartment. Let's try to make the lanes more narrow. It sounds like that was a good solution. One other thing to think about is cut-through traffic. You know, between Millbrae Avenue and Broadway, you get a lot of people that come off 101 because we have so many crashes and the county just widened the highway. So do you want more people cutting through and will you accommodate that? And then finally, also, I make sure everyone realizes that this council just voted to get rid of the Broadway train station. So you're going to have a much more dependent, a lot of people who live in this corridor are more dependent on getting to Millbrae. So do you want those people driving there? Do you want them biking, et cetera? And finally, in terms of the 85 mile an hour person, I propose that we fund this project by ticketing all the people who are test driving the Teslas there. Those people, given recent circumstances, I could care less about them. Thank you. That's
All right, thank you, Mr. Swire. Mr. Kirschner.
Thanks very much. Great presentation. Thank you for taking the feedback from the session in February. I like option 3 or C, whatever you're calling it, the new revised option. My question for the council is, have you consulted with the city council on what's the master plan for Rollins Road in general for the next 10, 15, 20 years so that we're building an infrastructure that supports whatever is going to happen there. It seems like we know some projects are happening on the north end for new apartments, but what's the rest of the plan for that corridor? It seems like that's an important piece of information to know before you move forward with this plan. The other thing I'd like to, I don't know if you can answer this now, but is the funding for this coming from the federal government? Can we answer that?
It's a state grant.
It's a state.
Not a federal.
Right. Okay. Is there any risk, you don't have to, you maybe answered offline, but is there any risk of this funding going away because of the change in the administration in Washington? And if so, like, is it more prudent to move faster to make sure that gets secured so that we don't lose that funding? Just a consideration. And the third thing I'd like to mention is like the connectivity at both ends of this project are super important. Like I see that we sort of are not doing anything from Broadway to Marston, but if you want people to bike from sort of central Burlingame north, like you need to make that connectivity tight and well designed and marked appropriately so you can get across Broadway. Because who's going to get from sort of Carolyn over to Broadway unless there's a solid way and a safe way for them? So I would just ask that be reconsidered in the plan. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Kirschner. Mr. Furr?
Hello, everyone. I've been an avid cyclist all my life, and I really appreciate all the support for cycling safety in Burlingame now. And this seems like a really great project. I'm also in favor of 1 or 3. Just the protected bike lane seems like a really good thing, especially with speeds of cars at that that speed. And another real big thing is, Burlingame's changed so much in the last 10 or 15 years as far as traffic flow due to businesses coming in and things like that. So, with all that said, building as many safe routes on bikes as possible is really essential. I think it's the future. It's a wave towards the future. Because look at how Millbrae, where the transportation center is, that's all centered around, efficient biking and walking and things like that. So I think it's really important for this project maybe to consider connecting with Millbrae. Maybe you already have, to maybe get together and figure a way to connect the end of this route right into that transportation center directly. I don't know if that's been talked about at all, but that seems like just a real common logical thing to do as far as going ahead in the future. And one other option is, I commuted on my bike to South San Francisco from Burlingame for 28 years. And I always use California Drive, sometimes Rollins, but usually California Drive. And I don't know, it's a whole other design thing, but maybe making that strip between Broadway and Millbrae, was it a class 4 where there's a bike protected lane? Maybe especially on the northbound side, it seems feasible, but making that into a protected lane, because it seems like it would connect really well with the south of Broadway on California Drive, because that's changed my life dramatically as far as feeling safe on my bike, because I used to commute California Drive every day and crazy sometimes. But if you maybe consider from Broadway to Millbrae, putting a project in over there, I don't know, it's just an idea, but it seems like we'll work on the west side with all the cars and everything, but just something to think about. I don't know, you guys are in charge of all that, but that's just what I'd like to say.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Furr.
I like the shirt.
And Mr. Baroni.
Thank you again. Due to law enforcement, I have a business off of Rollins Road. In the design or within the city, sensor in Europe, they're very used. They're light, stop lights. Would that be something that could be into design, into your future design at crosswalks, because the traffic does go to easy 70, 75 miles easily. And on Marston, they're actually, if you recall, there was no stop a few years ago. I see still people going straight. And due to, low, police, enforcement, I guess, because of, how many there are around, that those kind of like censored stoplights will serve a purpose. They determine the speed from far away and turn red as to serve the purpose crosswalk, moving forward in the future. Regardless about, I believe that about, mixed-use residential in that Rollins Road, that, corridor of the zoning does require to have less and less parking. So I believe the people want to move there in the future, they will have less car regardless.
Yeah.
So, because they give grants to go higher and so forth. So anyway, that would be, just one extra comment for that. And everywhere that could be useful, those sensor in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barone. Any other public comment? No? Ms. Brewer, do we have any emails on this topic?
Yes, we received 2 emails
You don't have to read them. Just tell me who they were.
from Sean Moran and David Couchy.
Okay, got it. All right, very good. Okay, I think that wraps up 6A, B, A. Yeah.
Well, I had comment.
Oh, do you want to make comments? All right.
Did want to
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah, if you want to come, sorry. Late, I'm tired, missed something. We still have more on the agenda. Vice Chair Couchy has comments. Go ahead.
Thank you for that warm welcome.
Welcome.
So first of all, I thought you did a really nice job. This is my second time to see the presentation. You did a really good job in your public presentation. I think there's a lot of good data there, and there are a lot of individuals in our city who are very demanding of data for why, and I thought you did a really nice job of addressing that. I also think that the comment that was made earlier by Mr., I don't know, but one of the individuals there, about that this kind of fits, kind of thinking ahead of what do we want to make this area is spot on. So the housing that's being developed there is really all about being transit centric. So the types of people who are going to move there are people who are into taking advantage of public transit. So these aren't going to be people that have a lot of cars. That's just not who's going to be attracted to live there. So I think it's very smart of us to get ahead of that and build this connected transit. I do appreciate the data about the speed, but I also think that that is incredibly disturbing. So if there's any way we could address that in the meantime through policing would be fantastic. I am voting for option number 3. I like that you are incorporating trees down where we're going to have that housing. And then, of course, you're not down where the industrial area is, but I think that does a nice job of addressing the 2 types of feel that we're trying to create, while the whole time creating safety for and encouraging bikers in that area. But I think the key, which you've heard over and over again, is we've got to figure out how to work with Millbrae to connect it to the train station, because that's really the whole point. And I do think we have to figure out how to go past Martzen. Nobody knows the name of that street. Because the point is that people coming from Burlingame that do need to go to that are going to have to cross Broadway. So we're going to have to figure that out. And I understand that that's hard, so it's easier not to do it. But I think we have to step up and try to figure out how to address that. And that is all my comments. I think you did a really nice job. Thank you.
Any other comments? What, yeah, go ahead.
I think, I think the reason that we're talking about ending at wherever we're ending before Broadway is not through lack of interest or lack of thinking this is important. It's because the Broadway grade separation project is, we're talking about $600 million. They're not going to waste time building something that they might have to, jackhammer up 3 years later or whatever. So I don't think it's because it's an oversight. I think you're thinking ahead that, we don't know what they're going to do. It could be completely different. Going to the 3 plans that you presented tonight, again, thank you very much for very lucid, clear, easy to digest presentation. My only real comment is, I think people are telling you that parking is important, and I think that we do need to listen to that. That being said, I'm not crazy about the bike lanes that are not separated, so I think, if you said which maybe 2 plans you should move forward with and see what the general public likes best too. But I would say, 1 and 3, where the bike lanes are not right next to lane of travel, make me more comfortable, especially since, we're hoping to have more bikers. We don't really know who's going to move into these high density apartments. We always hope they're people who have 1.5 cars, but that's not always the case. But thank you again.
Okay. Commissioner Brown, I'm just curious, which plan did you like? We're not voting, just
Yeah,
curious.
no, I do like the separation. I like as far away from moving traffic that the bicyclists can get
Mhm.
are probably the best options. So again, it's 1 and 3 as well. And it's a safety thing. If we can get them away from moving traffic,
Yep.
that's what we should consider first. And I guess my biggest concern, or not, maybe I just need to study a little bit more, is just, are we really looking at, are we going to condense the traffic? Are we going to put the diet in? And is it really going to change just the capacity too much? That's my only question. And to your point, I'm not an engineer either. So just asking the question, if we want people to use the bike lanes as we expect them to, then we certainly don't want to have more capacity on those roads than we currently do. So that's just my concern.
Okay, thank you. And I liked option 3, concept 3. I was one of the 5 people that was at your first meeting, so it's. Yeah, so I hope that helps with the public's comment, our comment. There's a few emails also with comments, and if we can get the link for the survey reposted. And how long, by the way, will that be available for people to comment on? Yeah. For the record and for people that are still awake and listening.
So we haven't set a final end date.
Okay.
In part because it has been a rather low turnout and we're continuing to reach out to people.
Okay.
Even when we have the individual one-on-one calls, we also point out and say, hey, get your employees to get on there and do that with the Humane Society. That actually worked. We got a number of people from there to come out and comment. So we are probably going to keep it running for another couple of weeks. We have not set a definitive end date, particularly if we start to get a lot of feedback. We're going to want to keep gathering as much data as possible.
Okay. All right. We appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll track it as we get the feedback, but we'll make sure we repost it a couple times just to make sure people know. And then at some point we do get.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just about
Corporal.
the speed, just confirming, you said we only have flexibility with the speed survey of 5 miles per hour under, right?
To reduce the speed.
To reduce the speed. So yeah, I just don't think that it'd be practical to reduce the speed at all, because when I've conducted radar there, all cars are on average going at least 45.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we'd be able to lower it anymore.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. All right. We're going to close all the discussion items in section 6 and move on to section 7. Thank you all for being here. You're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the
We're going to be
agenda.
till midnight, so.
No, we were not. By the way, did
Thank you for coming. We,
anybody know?
Oh, yeah.
anyone know the Warriors score?
Did they win?
We won.
Warriors?
I looked. It was one.
They won?
130 to 104.
They won?
They won.
Thank you.
Fabulous. All right. Good evening.
Pay attention.
Item 7, informational items. Any public comment on item 7? Mr.
I
Brewer?
nothing. No.
Nothing. Okay. No community group updates, Ms. Brewer?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Okay. Engineering reports, Mr. Wong.
Tell me it's short, Mr.
It is short. Only
Thank you,
3
Chair Marta. It's not as short as last month.
Uh,
We do have a couple items. And I'll let Commissioner Israel speak a little bit more on this, but Hillsdale traffic calming.
Hilton side.
We've,
Side.
did I say Hills? That's because I was
Wanna-
formerly of that age.
Mr. Wong's tired as well.
Hillside.
Huh.
We've been collecting data, both collision data and speed and traffic volume data, so we have a good sense. The radar, we have the radar. PD has deployed their radar trailer out there. It was out there last week when we were out there, so hopefully, I think it's going to be out there maybe another week, but it's been out there for a couple already. So we'll be able to report back. I actually met with Commissioner Israelite out there, and we discussed part of it. Just what we saw and some of the results of the data I had just acquired that day. So we'll bring that back to the community. I think we have an idea of some options, and I think we talked about phasing it, and we can start one way. And we'll bring that to you. I also want to let you know we have similar requests, and we've been collecting data with Burial A, Adeline, Alpine, and Martinez. Very, traffic calming requests, and we've been doing the same thing, getting the collision history, the speed and volumes that we have out there, just so we can get that. Since we are able to do it ourselves now, we're able to get a little bit more of it and get a better idea and play with it a little bit. Another one that came up kind of tonight, bicycle boulevards, specifically the speed cushions on Carmelita. So we are reviewing it right now, and we're looking at potentially making modifications to the layout of what's out there, either changing the type, maybe removing a couple. We'll be able to give you an update on that, but sometime next month. And the last one I have, Peninsula Dwight Road. We've been working with the city of San Mateo on that. We've put in the high visibility crosswalks. They operate and maintain that signal, and they've actually put in the what we call the lead pedestrian interval. So it allows the pedestrian to walk in. And the next thing we're doing is trying to review additional signage that we can put up there. Maybe stuff that we have similar to what we have, just be aware, yield to pedestrians and crosswalks, something straightforward like that. So with that, that is the engineer's report for this month.
It was really short.
Any questions?
Yes.
Nope.
No.
Nope. All right. Corporal.
Hi.
Corporal Marin?
Yes, sir.
All right.
In like the county.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I always
For
say that.
being so patient.
Yeah,
Oh.
no worries.
All right. You look so energetic.
Good information. Yeah. So for the month of February, there were 12 total collisions to report. Hit and run collisions or collisions caused by UI were filtered out and do not appear in this report. Of those collisions, 7 collisions were involved with another motor vehicle. 1 collision was involved with a fixed or other object. 4 collisions involved pedestrians, and out of all the collisions, 2 resulted in major injuries. I'm going to go over the most common collision factors. They were right-of-way violations, unsafe turning movements, and unsafe speed. 3 were they failed to yield for the left turn. 1 was for fail to yield when entering or crossing a roadway. 2 were failure to yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk. 2 were for the pedestrian fail to yield to the motorist. 2 were for unsafe turning movement, and 2 were for unsafe speed. I just have a couple here for the pedestrian summaries. So 1 was a vehicle versus pedestrian at Broadway Laguna. The pedestrian was basically walking westbound on Broadway within the south crosswalk crossing Laguna. And the driver was driving northbound on Laguna, approaching the intersection with Broadway. The driver made a complete stop at the stop sign, then proceeded to make the right turn onto eastbound Broadway and collided with the pedestrian. It was at a very slow speed. And this one, I don't believe has any association to any of the road markings. I think it was just a miscommunication with the driver and the pedestrian, like where they thought, you know, he was like, go ahead, and it was just a miscommunication there. The second vehicle versus pedestrian one was at the roundabout. The driver was driving northbound on California Drive, approaching the roundabout, while the pedestrian was walking eastbound on California Drive, crossing Lorton Avenue at the roundabout in the marked crosswalk with flashing lights activated. The driver proceeded straight at the roundabout and collided with the pedestrian in the crosswalk. And the driver was traveling at approximately 2 to 3 miles per hour at the time of the collision, and he just stated that he did not see the pedestrian. And that was at night, and it was raining, so visibility might have been a factor, but the lights were flashing, so yeah. That's terrible. Vehicle versus pedestrian, another one at Oak Grove. The pedestrian crossed Oak Grove Avenue mid-block outside of the crosswalk while the pedestrian was driving westbound on Oak Grove. The driver stated that the pedestrian emerged between 2 parked cars. So they basically just came out of the roadway without a crosswalk. So that one was the pedestrian's fault. The driver actually did try to like swerve around, but the pedestrian just came out of nowhere in between the cars. So for that one, the vehicle hit the pedestrian's left leg and she fell to the floor and sustained minor injuries. Case 477, vehicle versus pedestrian at El Camino Real and Lincoln. So this one was a major injury collision. It was a motorcycle versus a pedestrian. The motorcycle was riding northbound on El Camino in the number 1 lane approaching Lincoln Avenue, and this was at almost 11 at night. The driver proceeded through the intersection of El Camino. He had a green light. The pedestrian just came wandering into the roadway in the middle of the night, wearing all black clothing, and not in the crosswalk. There was a crosswalk on the north side of that intersection, but he was on the south side, so he wasn't within a crosswalk at all. The motorcyclist got minor injuries, and the pedestrian had pretty significant injuries, was transported to San Francisco General. And what else? Oh, the other major injury collision was case 521. I took this report as well. Vehicle versus a motorcycle. It's pretty straightforward though. The motorcycle was going bound on El Camino Real. He had the green light, and it was just a driver failing to yield for the left turn. They turned into the motorcycle, and then he got flown pretty much 30 feet onto the sidewalk. So, but surprisingly, he only had road rash and a broken arm.
Wow.
Any questions or
Question?
other
Yep.
reports that you want me to go over?
Commissioner
First of all,
Isbeth?
that was super, super helpful, the way you broke it down and explained everything. I think that was really great. I mean, it's sad, but it doesn't sound like any of these things were preventable by something that the city would have done. I mean, it's like.
They're not. That's what I was going to mention too. Like none of these collisions have anything. I think that they're all driver error, pedestrian error. I don't think there's anything that could have been done on our end as a committee to like change the outcome.
I will say though, this is the 5th month in a row that a pedestrian's been hit by a vehicle, and the driver's comment was they didn't see him. So that is a common theme that we're hearing,
Especially with the lights. But we do we have grants, traffic grants from OTS, and we utilize those as well to do extra enforcement. Like we'll come in on overtime and do like pedestrian stings where we have, I don't know if you guys know about those.
One on Peninsula, I believe it was Peninsula about 2 years ago.
Peninsula, yeah, we do them on Peninsula. We've done them on Rollins Road as well. because there's a lot of the dog walkers from the SPCA and they complain about the crosswalks. So we'll have, like a non-sworn member just dress in plain attire and they basically cross the crosswalk for like 4 hours back and forth. And we just wait, we basically set cars up and then see, and then we get a lot of citations that way. So we do what we can with, the pedestrian violations, but you know, at the end of the day, like people are texting, people are, you know, you never know, you can't control everybody. So,
Right.
yeah. And then I know we're not, I mean, it wasn't really mentioned in here because we're not supposed to discuss hit and run collisions, but we did have that one 2 days ago, the fatal. But that one was just nothing at all related to city engineering. It was just the driver blew the red light. So there's nothing as well that could have been done to prevent that. So just for peace of mind, everyone's peace of mind.
I do have a clarity question. So on Oak Grove, that's where I'm assuming this happened, right near the high school?
When was this? Are you
So,
talking about
The person who crossed.
it's the one that is 473.
473? Yes.
So I'm assuming it said at Oak Grove. It doesn't say the cross street, but I'm assuming it was near, am I wrong? Was it near the high school?
Cross Oak Grove, mid-block. See, hold on, I have the case. 3. I didn't look for it.
Through chair.
Yep.
With the address at 1228 Oak Grove, close to Newchentel. So it's on the west side, Newchentel.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the other side.
So
of-
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
California.
okay.
So while I'm here though, just question, because the comment was they didn't go on they weren't on a crosswalk.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to go, is the law, you have to go to a crosswalk in the neighborhood?
It's not, but the pedestrian does have to yield to,
Okay.
you can't just go out into the roadway without looking. The drivers have the right of way unless there's a crosswalk. And even still, even if there is a crosswalk, the pedestrian, they're still required to make sure that it's clear and safe to go. So I know it's actually a misconception. A lot of the times they think that the pedestrians have the right of way a lot more than they do. And that's why when you see like pedestrian crashes, pedestrian vehicle collisions, I would say over like around 80% is the pedestrian's fault.
I think that's a misconception for everyone.
Yeah.
As we,
Yeah.
as drivers, always
100%.
say, we always think that the
Pedestrian has the right of way. Yeah, I grew
doesn't
up
matter if they're crossing the walk or not, we should them and they
100%.
the way, right?
And I definitely grew up as well with my dad telling me, you know, pedestrians always have the right of way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Dad, that's not the case. So,
But I would argue they should.
yeah,
I would argue that that's something that we need to change.
yeah, there's nothing we can do about that. Those are people above us with the vehicle. So, and same with bicycle crashes as well. A lot of the bicycles are at fault. I take a lot of the crashes and the bicyclists are at fault. I do what I can in that area. That was a big discussion today, but the kids are riding their bicycles very recklessly as well. So, I pulled over a juvenile that was riding his bicycle and he ran 2 stop signs and then a red light right in front. So instead of giving him a ticket, I called his father. But yeah, like we're trying to do what we can with the bicycles as well. But like I said, there's only one of me that's technically in traffic right now. So I do what I can. But
Well, thank you for doing what you do.
yeah, of course. Yeah. This was really informative, being that I'm the only person that's kind of patrolling. So
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
of course.
All right, Commissioner Communications? Yes,
I did have a communication
okay.
with Michael Brownrigg and another member of our neighborhood who, because we are talking about the dearth of available police to give out tickets for blatant, speeding, it was brought to our attention by one of our neighbors that in Arizona, I believe in Tucson, there are these mobile boxes that are about this big. They almost look like those utility boxes that are in the the easement, the cities right away, and it will ticket you based on speed.
Hmm.
And Mayor Brownrigg, ex-Mayor
Vice Mayor.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg feels that, because we can't foresee that anything is going to really change in the future with traffic, having enough people to really do a lot of traffic enforcement, that we cities should look into this. And it's really cool because they're mobile, so you never really know where they are. They're not very obvious. And if we can't have, police that are available to ticket people who are literally going like 50 miles an hour down a, 25, 30 mile an hour street, this could be something that we could use. I know Mr. Wong and I talked about that we might get them and that they can give warnings, but it's not legal yet for the state to ticket or something like that. But I just wanted to bring this up because in the near future, it might be worth having a committee to look at the possibility of having electronic, digital type enforcement, since human enforcement is.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Because it's a lot of traffic enforcement is about deterrence as well. So just presence in a specific area, obviously deters. And that's something that we can discuss in our grant as well. Because sometimes when we fill out the grant, we can request different like materials. So like new ticket writers or, new materials for our DUI checkpoints and stuff. So maybe that can be something, once it gets approved, I don't think it would be something they would go for if it's not actually ticketing, but once it does, like maybe that's something that they would consider buying for us with the.
Cool. I'm sure it would pay itself off handsomely.
Yeah.
Mr. Wong, you had a comment?
Through Chair, yeah, I can go ahead and give you a little update. We have tried to look into it, but right now, as it is, there are only 6 agencies, 3 in California, or 3 in Southern California, 3 in Northern California, that are able to photo enforce basically speed cameras. In the Northern California, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose. So we're not able to use that to write citations. And for trying to use it for us, we did kick myself and Sergeant Orloff, we kicked it around. The issue is, even if we use it to try to send warnings, it's I mean, we'd almost have to, I think we have to generate 2,000 warnings a month for it to be, I mean, there's a charge for each warning that goes out. The systems themselves are fairly costly right now. And even if, and we're not even sure, talking over Sergeant Orloff, that even, we're curious on how the state's going to even enforce some of it, because it only takes a picture of your license plate. And previously, the city has done photo enforcement, or I'm sorry, red light cameras. And there was some difficulty like showing the person that's driving versus I wasn't driving, you only got my license plate, how can you give me a citation? So there's some of that the state needs to work out beforehand. So now I think we're going to sit on the sidelines until the state with the pilot program figures it out and then go forward. If they even do, again, it's a pilot program and it's got a few years attached to it.
Is that why only Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose are allowed to do it, because it's a pilot program?
And the state granted them approval, and 3 cities in Southern California. So,
okay, well,
we're
keep our eyes on.
Yes.
I just wanted to bring it up because Vice Mayor Brownrigg really is very interested in getting that if we can. That was my only communication.
All right, very good, very good. Any other communication? I'll be brief. I had several, fortunately. So you probably want to know about Vision Zero. So we had our first meeting on the 5th of March. And this was to provide data to the group and lay out the agenda for the 4 meetings, what we're going to be looking at. So there are minutes that were taken. I think they're with your department, Mr. Wong. They're in review, and they'll be open to the public once engineering has had a chance to review them all. There's a website, burlingame.vz.com.org.com, I think. Did you go to it?
I did go to it.
.com?
There's no data there.
There's no data there yet. No, it's still in review.
But what you can do is
Yeah.
add your comments.
Yeah, right. And so they requested, and it's in the e-news as well. I've seen it the last couple of weeks that people go there and add their comments. So that was a good kickoff. Mayor Brownrigg, I'm sorry, Mayor Stevenson, and I don't think there was another council member there. Mayor Stevenson was there for sure. And several others from the community, Mr. Kavranian from Broadway and others. So they provided some good information and we provided some good feedback. And they're going to take community feedback and information. We'll discuss plans on things that we can do that achieve that Vision Zero goal of zero serious accidents and injuries in our town. So there's several more meetings that we're gonna have on those topics. The other thing that I did is I went by Farmers Market, and Broadway Specific Plan Group were out there, and they were asking for feedback, and I guess they decided that they weren't going to follow through on this Broadway Specific Plan. I don't know if you knew about that. I was kind of surprised. It was an interesting redevelopment that they were talking about with more housing and other improvements in that area, but just recently they decided they weren't going to go through, and the
Say that.
stakeholders in that area didn't want it. So was it city council that decided that they weren't going to continue to move forward with that project? Do you know? You don't know anything about that? Okay. So that's what I was told on the kind of,
Council that.
I think so. The third thing is I attended the San Mateo County Transportation Authority Community Advisory Committee meeting. One of the topics was the Broadway grade separation. They can potentially provide up to 50% of the cost of the Broadway grade separation project. They have a list of high potential or high priority projects that they could fund. And so they went down their list and they talked about it. When they got to Broadway grade, that was a long discussion by the engineering community, by the engineers, sorry. And public was allowed feedback. Mr. Wong and Director Syed Mertuza gave me some really good talking points. And so I spoke on our behalf and put some facts in front of people why we believe it's the most important project that they could fund. And after the public comment, then the people on the committee spoke, and there were a number of them that spoke in favor of our project. And they talked about not piecemealing a little bit of money to this project, a little bit of money to that project, but pulling it all and putting it on their number one project. And I heard a lot of in favor of Broadway grade. So we'll hope that they'll move forward with that. One thing that our council, if you were at the meeting a couple weeks ago, they talked about how could we close the gap, and there's several alternatives. One that would really close the big gap is to close Broadway Station, right? And that'll really change the construction in that area. But it all depends if the project's going to be funded, whether the city needs to take that position and actually move forward without a station there. But they went from $600 million in construction costs down to, if we did no station, down to 380 million in construction costs. And then you add all the engineering and stuff, and it's probably more like 600 million. So we're still way up there.
Can you say those numbers one more time?
So with no change to the current design, it's about 600 million in construction costs. If they get rid of the station, it's about 380 million in construction costs.
Okay.
So there's various stages in between where they can reduce the cost of the construction costs. So, you know, it's not super encouraging that they're going to fund this to go further, but there were more people on that committee that were in favor of funding our project than any other project. So I'm hoping, you know, they will. And then the last thing is I had a meeting with Mayor Stevenson just to get his viewpoint and his colleagues' viewpoints on things. And we talked about, Mr. Wong, that list of projects that you gave us in January. Some of the things that he was most interested in was our traffic calming around schools. He brought up the Oak Grove traffic signal, you know, what's going on there at that traffic, that train crossing. I asked him about the downtown area, any concerns about the downtown area. He said, you know, the parking's good. And I said, great, because we built a 5-story garage and we're hoping it's being utilized. He was concerned about bike safety in that area, in the downtown, the Burlingame Avenue area. So he says he hears and sees a lot of bikers that don't pay attention to the intersections and, you know, riding in the middle of the road and other silly things like that, which we can't really do a whole lot about. It's more enforcement. We talked about Peninsula Avenue and safety there, and he said the San Mateo district, City of San Mateo council member who is responsible for that district is in discussions with our director of engineering on improvements for that area. So sounds like we're getting good collaboration there. So that was important. And then we talked about a lot of stuff, but including Broadway grade. And then probably the other thing that he was most interested in is the ECR redevelopment and our continued involvement in that, because that's a big deal. So, you know, I think we have a subcommittee. Yeah, we do. We have a committee on that.
Who the
So
brightest and best?
we picked the brightest, because that's a big deal. So, so it's been a busy month for me. So, right. That's all I have. Committee reports. Item 8. No public comments. Hillside. We heard something about Hillside.
Just discussed
Okay.
that. So I'm just in the engineer report.
All right. All right. Did you get a chance to speak with Commissioner Johnson?
No, she'd already flown the.
He's gone. All right. All right.
But thank you for her contact info.
No problem. No problem. And then KPIs, Commissioner Brown and Couchy, or Vice Chair Couchy and Brown?
So we met last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we had a very productive meeting. So, you know, obviously it was Commissioner Brown's first meeting, so it was getting up to speed, but we also progressed in kind of what the next steps are. We went through, Andy, everything we talked about. I think we're having another meeting tomorrow. We'll put together an official timeline, but I think the next thing that we need to do is that meeting that we discussed with having with, if we can get and have it with City Thread on execution, and I think we'll be ready for that. We'll know when we're going to be ready for that after tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, it's really interesting. I think it was, and Vice Chair Couchy is incredibly well prepared. So there was some lively conversations. I think I may have opened up a couple of other things that we'll continue to talk about, and not to ask Mr. Wong to do any additional work, but just to try to maybe segregate a couple little things, but a really good conversation. And I do think we'll make quite a bit of progress in the next couple weeks.
Okay. Okay. And then ECR renewal,
We haven't met yet.
okay.
Any update on the timeline? Have you heard from Caltrans?
I have not heard directly, but I'll try to give you an update.
Just like time, I mean, like when they might start, just so we will meet and go through the list of things that we want to make sure they do and, all that stuff.
Okay.
I'm-
All right. Future agenda items, Mr. Wong.
We'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
Because one of the agenda items I wanted to bring up, there's been a delay on it, but we'll talk. We'll have our meeting because I know of the 5, we'll be missing 2 commissioners at the next.
Right. I won't be here.
So try not to make any really interesting decisions. Or just do the boring stuff while I'm
We'll try to get something of interest.
gone.
Okay. And other than that, motion to adjourn? Move to adjourn?